One day in Baki Hama's class, suddenly everyone starts to shake like a leaf and they all realize that only Baki himself isn't shaking, rather he is sleeping soundly. After class, some punks surround Baki and try to bully him, but soon they start shaking as well. A big fatso steps forward to teach him a lesson but somehow realizes that he shouldn't mess with Baki at any cost. Baki walks away from them and tells them that he will harm them if they trouble him. Later, the fourth master of the Tokugawa family visits Baki's school and summons Baki to meet him. He asks about his injury and shows him a weird-looking box that contains crystallized nitrogen. He explains that nitrogen can't be crystallized, but many years ago, nitrogen was being transported through sea when a storm hit the ship. Surprisingly, when the ship reached the dock, the nitrogen had crystallized and at the same time nitrogen around the world crystallized as well. He then tells Baki that something evil is coming to Tokyo soon. In America's top-notch prison, a prisoner named Dorian is taken to the inner gallows to be executed. He is hung on the noose and after 10 minutes a doctor comes to confirm his death, but suddenly Dorian wakes up. He beats everyone around him and slaughters them like it's a piece of cake. When the other guards come to the scene, they find a written message that he is coming to Tokyo. At the same time, a man named Doyle is also to be executed in an England prison and his executioner rants about how Doyle's dreams are coming to an end. He is then electrocuted till there's foam coming from his mouth and his eyes start bleeding. But just when the electricity is stopped, he bursts forward from his restraints and smacks the guards' head against each other. He remains blindfolded as he kills the executioner and then heads to an airbase where an airplane is waiting for him to take him to the east. In a Russian prison, a man named Sikorsky escapes by climbing up a 100 meters vertical wall and goes to the base where he defeats Russia's national hero named Galen. In Florida, America, a guard warns the counselor that he should take off every metallic thing before meeting the prisoner Speck since he can use anything to attack him. The counselor follows his instructions and heads to meet Speck behind a wall, but he discovers that there's no one in the prison cell. Suddenly, Speck slides the air vent from above him and grabs the counselor. He smacks him against the wall and declares that he is heading to Tokyo. Since the prison is deep under sea, nobody expects him to escape alive, but he still manages to swim to the coastal guard where he kills everyone. In a Japanese prison, a prison named Yanagi is kept inside a special glass which can even repel rockets. Yanagi is famous for poisonous gases and uses a special martial arts technique to break the glass. He then kills the guards and even blows out the brains of one of them. Master Tokugawa then tells Baki that all infamous brutal prisoners have escaped around the world to head to Japan and that there's some synchronicity in the whole process. Baki tells Tokugawa not to overreact, but Tokugawa insists that the prisoners are heading to Tokyo to fight against the underground martial artists, and soon there's going to be a fight of good and dark martial artists. In the meanwhile, a Kick Fighter Club member comes across Doyle who instantly attacks him. The fighter's hands get injured when he tries to get close to Doyle and soon Doyle finishes him off by using a blade. At the same time, Baki's schoolmates gather different fighters who seem like the punks of their era to take on Baki, and the fatso wannabe bully then approaches Baki to take him to them. Baki rips off plaster on his arm and leaves with him. He goes to a ground where the pathetic punks are waiting for him and one of them approaches Baki with a large blade. Baki thinks he will smash his head in and the punk senses that he cannot win the fight when he steps close to him. He backs off, but another punk approaches Baki with a weapon that resembles a rope dart. He shows off his smooth skills with the rope dart, but the rope doesn't hit Baki. Instead, Baki uses the rope to make it hit the punk's face instead. Up next, another thug with a knife approaches him, but Baki instantly takes the knife from him and hands it back to him. The fatso bully takes out a gun and suddenly someone appears behind him. A report gets made to the police HQ that someone smashed into a car and destroyed it with his bare hands. The police soon discover that the perpetrator was actually the escaped convict Speck, and at the same time, Speck appears behind the fatso bully. Speck takes the gun and fires it into his head many times, but nothing happens to him. He tells Baki that he has come to face the world's strongest man, and when he shakes his hands, a fake hand falls down. He laughs out loud that the hand belongs to Junsa Kaneda and then smashes Baki's stomach. He proceeds to smash his head into the ground, and the people around the area think Speck has killed someone, so they call the police. Soon the police arrive and arrest Speck, but he pulls off the metal handcuffs with sheer force and turns back to Baki. He tells him not to disappoint him, and when Baki shakes hands with him again, he kicks him in the face. The police make an announcement on TV about the escaped prisoners and how they are coming to Tokyo. The world's strongest man Hama Yujiro watches the announcement and thinks even the FBI can never catch the convicts. Meanwhile, Yanagi meets up with his old acquaintance Goki and tells him that he should have killed him ages ago since he has recently lost a fight now and looks bony. Goki was actually the founder of Flower Jiu-Jitsu who could throw any person stronger than him over him, and when he hears this, he asks Yanagi whether he wants to fight him. Yanagi comments that traditional fighters like him should just start fighting rather than ask questions and throws the boiling pot at him. He almost stabs his eye and tells him that he has lost again. Speck gets detained in prison again and the Metropolitan Police Chief briefs the police force on what to do. Later when he goes to take a piss, Speck joins him in the washroom and even offers him Chinese food that he bought from the local market. The chief attacks him but he stops him easily and stuffs food in his mouth. The guards sound an alarm when they notice that Speck's room has a huge hole, but Speck returns and tells him that he is not leaving. At a judo house, a fighter named Orochi who is a pupil of Shinshinkai Karate faces Retsu who has defeated Baki in the maximum tournament. They both fight each other with extraordinary strength and Retsu lays more damage on Orochi, so Orochi declares him the winner. He starts lecturing his students about how karate has advanced in the world, but just then, Dorian arrives at the place looking for Orochi. Orochi asks Dorian to take off his shoes and he starts to take them off, but he then smacks Orochi instead. He then attacks his eyes and after taking off his belt, he starts to choke him. Orochi manages to get away as he launches his special move on him and Dorian gets sent flying back. Dorian then throws a wood plank towards Orochi which stabs him in the neck and he collapses on the floor with blood sprouting out of his neck. Dorian starts to leave but Retsu stops him and suddenly Dorian begins to cry. He plucks out his nose hair and throws it at Retsu's eye but Retsu manages to avoid it. He attacks him back and they both fight with each other till Dorian stops. He takes out alcohol and after drinking it slightly, he pours it all around himself in a circle. He then takes out a lighter and lights fire all around the dojo. Dorian disappears while the others rush to deal with the fire. Baki's class gets a physical test in which they have to do some standard exercises. The students get asked to do a 100-meter sprint first, but when Baki tries to do it, he ends up making a hole on the ground. Up next the teacher asks them to throw the softball to measure their throw, but Baki ends up throwing the ball so high that it slowly lands on the ground. The coach asks them to do 15 pull-ups next and Baki does them so fast that nobody can count them. The coach asks him to do it again, but when he does it slowly, he ends up pulling off the metal bar. Coach tells him that he is going to fail all the physical tests at this point, and up next the students are asked to run for 1,500 meters. Baki asks his teacher whether he will pass him if he beats the record, which is for 3.5 minutes, and the teacher agrees to give him a full score if that happens. Baki runs very fast in the first and second lap, beating even the world record, and his teacher cannot believe it, but soon he starts imagining that he is pulling a huge load behind him which slows him down and he barely finishes the finish line. His teacher still ends up passing him while Baki thinks that he may not be suitable for athletics after all. Tokugawa goes to a dinner with a fighter Iguri who was beaten by Baki in the last tournament and his pet fighter Tadioka. Tadioka appears restless to fight someone and he tells the others that he wants to fight immediately. Suddenly the convict Sikorsky appears and attacks Tadioka. Sikorsky stabs his hands and when he tries to fight back, Sikorsky smashes him down immediately. The ambulance gets called and Tadioka gets taken into the ambulance. Suddenly Iguri punches Sikorsky, but Sikorsky just avoids his punch and smashes him down. He then plasters him against the ambulance and punches him so hard that he passes out. The police get called while Sikorsky goes on a ride with Tokugawa. They arrive at his fighting coliseum and suddenly all the escaped prisoners appear at the venue one by one. Tokugawa asks them about their reason to gather at one place and each one of them answers that they were brought here through their senses or by the smell of blood. The situation becomes tense, but suddenly Baki also enters through one of the doors. Just then a group of fighters appear at the other end as well. The 5 convicts face Baki along with Doppo Orochi, who is the 10th Grandmaster of Shinshinkai Karate, and Hanayama, who is a Yakuza master excelling in street fighting. Tokugawa tells the convicts that he held a tournament with 38 fighters once, and he tells them how it was such a historical tournament which tested the best of all the best fighters. He then reveals that Baki was the winner of the tournament and players all set a rule that they can go after any one of the others anywhere anytime during their daily life. They all agree to this and Baki then leaves since he has to go school the next day. The others leave as well and Speck returns to his prison cell to sleep. Dorian heads out with Doppo and they both come across Retsu, who also wants to fight him. Since the rules state that they can fight anywhere, Doppo suddenly smashes his bag on Dorian's face. He tells Retsu that he will be the one to take on Dorian, and Dorian then throws fire at him, but he dodges it by using a special martial arts technique. Meanwhile Iguri approaches Sikorsky and tells him that he will take his revenge. Suddenly 2 of Iguri's guys surround Sikorsky and beat him up. They push him down and tie him to take him to their premises. Dorian throws a wire at Doppo which cuts his hand clean, and he explains that the titanium wire can't be seen by anyone and can't be broken by anyone either. He notices that Doppo has completely stopped the bleeding by applying pressure on it, and Doppo tells him that practicing his martial arts was so hard that he would break his fingers all the time and he always wishes he didn't have his fingers. He then punches Dorian's face with his stump, which sends him to the ground, and Dorian gets up to find him and Retsu gone. Igori's guys tie Sikorsky up and Igori then shoots a couple of bullets into him. Sikorsky still gets up and beats up one of the guys. He then beats up the second guy as well, and Igori admits that he has lost. He kneels down to beg forgiveness and Sikorsky kicks him on his back. He throws him around and tells him that he can't let him live now that he knows his secret. He then hurls him to a side with a deadlift and starts throwing different gym equipment at him, which gives him endless injuries. Finally, when he is down, Sikorsky pees on him and Igori then tries to make one last effort to get back at him. Sikorsky makes a slice on his neck and goes away. Baki goes on a date with his landlord's daughter Koju, and a bunch of thugs stop them in a street. Baki gives them a death glare which makes them back away. They both then spend a lot of time together, and on the way back they even hold hands. Koju recalls the moment when Baki kissed her desperately before his fight in the last tournament, and Baki tells her to forget it. He then kisses her forehead and starts to kiss her, but suddenly Speck appears behind Koju. Baki gives him a death glare as well, and suddenly Hanayama comes. He takes Speck away and Koju doesn't get a hint of what has happened behind her bike. She seems to think everything is really quiet while Hanayama takes Speck to a side and they both chit-chat. Speck knees Hanayama in his face, and Hanayama then quietly take off his clothes to reveal a tattoo on his back which is called a man standing up. Long ago, Hanayama's predecessor was attacked by a group of bandits when he was young, but an unknown man named Yukichi saved him and he had the same tattoo on his back. Young Hanayama then got the same tattoo on his back, but he didn't think the tattoo was complete. He then rampaged his way into a group rival association where he defeated everywhere, and when he got their blood on his hands, he realized that his tattoo was finally complete. Speck punches Hanayama a couple of times and then smashes him into a street pole. Chiharu Shiba, a leader of Kurenai racing gang, breaks up a fight happening in the market, and he tells the two thugs to settle the fight with their bare fists. Speck meanwhile smashes a bench on Hanayama's head, which seems to wake him up, and Hanayama then adopts a martial arts pose. Speck also adopts the same posture and tells him that they will each deal one blow on each other to settle matters. At the same time, a guard in America discovers that the Statue of Liberty has been damaged by someone's punch, and suddenly the whole statue starts to crack. A group of Marines get called to fix it, and they tie the statue with steel cords to tie it together. Somehow they manage to seal it back together, and meanwhile Speck launches a series of punches on Hanayama using his special oxygenless technique, which requires no breathing from him. He continues to punch Hanayama senselessly till Hanayama sees an opening and punches him back, which sends him flying into the air. At the Tokyo Metropolitan Headquarters, the chief gets a briefing about the special type of uniform they have developed for an elite force which is gathered from all around Japan, and how they are going to wear special helmets and protective gear. He gets told about the newly developed gun as well, and the chief insists to everyone that Speck cannot just leave and come back to the jail according to his will. They then show him a video in which the elite force faces Speck in the new gear and with new guns, but he defeats them easily and no bullet seems to work on him. Hanayama keeps punching Speck till he starts to see God, and Speck admits that he has never felt this good before. Hanayama asks him if he should continue, and Speck then pushes some bullets in his mouth which make an explosion. An explosion gets heard by Baki and his girlfriend as well, and Hanayama asks Speck whether he should continue. He then punches him again, which sends him flying to an electric pole and electrocutes him. Speck collapses to the ground like a toasted beater, and meanwhile the Metropolitan Chief Officer scolds his minions for letting Speck steal ammunition. Just then, Hanayama appears and hands over Speck's ugly body to him to keep it. The police force thanks him and offers him first aid for his injuries. They then assign a driver to him to drop him off at his home, but just when they get into the car, suddenly Speck appears and flips the car over. Hanayama tries to crawl out and Speck kicks him. He then throws him out, and when Hanayama readies himself to face him, Speck takes out a gun and starts shooting bullets at his legs like a maniac. He fills the barrel again and once again shoots at him again and again. He then picks him up with his hand and throws him around like he is a piece of radish. Once he is done, he puts the gun in his mouth and Hanayama recalls Yujiro's face. He moves his mouth so that the bullet goes through his cheek. He then pushes Speck down and starts punching his face again and again endlessly. Just then, Speck covers his eyes and throws something in the air, due to which a bright light gets released in the air. Hanayama misses his punch due to the flash stun grenade, and Speck takes this moment to jump behind him and take him in a chokehold. He starts choking him, which causes Hanayama to grab his arm and pull out a chunk of meat. Hanayama then proceeds to pull out a chunk of meat from his thigh, and Speck thrusts his finger into Hanayama's ear to get away from him. Hanayama extends his arms and grabs a hold of his neck. He chokes him so hard that Speck takes out his finger and passes out on the ground. Hanayama remains standing and later Speck is taken to a hospital where the doctor learns that Speck is actually 97 years old. He marvels at the fact that Speck originally looked much younger when he was brought in, but after 1 week, he looks about his age. He recalls an incident from years ago in California where a treasure hunter named Beyond kept searching for a certain cargo ship for 30 years. Finally he discovered the ship, in which he came across billions of yen of gold and silver and antiques, and he was so excited that he came into his pants. However, soon afterwards he died, and it was then discovered that Beyond was actually 88 years old, which was unbelievable. All of his energy evaporated after he fulfilled his dream, and Speck's doctor thinks that the same thing happened to Speck, whose energy evaporated after fighting with Hanayama. Baki gives his examination, in which he does not write anything, and when his teacher notices it, he starts giving him a lecture on how he needs to improve his intellectual abilities rather than athletic abilities. He gives him examples of how he can never outswim a boat or outrun a motorcycle, and Baki argues with him that knows many people who can do it. His teacher makes fun of him and asks him whether his dad can do it. Suddenly Doyle jumps into the classroom and pushes his teacher to the side. Baki then kicks his desk on Doyle's chest, which sends him flying. Doyle realizes that Baki is aware how dangerous he is, and Baki then walks over to the side of his classroom. He jumps down from the second floor since he doesn't want to endanger his classmates, and he then starts walking to avoid Doyle. He comes across the school thugs who welcome him, and he also passes by a gardener. Suddenly the gardener throws a sickle at Baki's back, which he manages to dodge, and Baki turns around to discover that it's actually Yanagi. Yanagi takes out 2 sickles and starts swinging them so quickly that Baki is not able to see them properly. He throws 1 sickle at Baki, which he manages to avoid swiftly. Yanagi compliments Baki's quick reflexes since it's hard to follow the movement of such objects, and he throws 1 sickle at him. He starts swinging the other sickle even more quickly, and he attacks Baki several times, which Baki manages to avoid. Baki uses his shirt to avoid his attacks, and suddenly Goki arrives behind him. He throws a pot of cold water at Yanagi and then starts laughing like a maniac at Yanagi's expression. Yanagi throws the pot back at him, but Goki avoids being hit and punches under his chin, which puts him on the ground. A 71-year-old professor named Hasegawa comments that some athletes train so hard that they end up destroying their molar teeth, and he shows an X-ray of a correctional facility person whose molars are very worn. He explains that the concerned person was practicing a special type of martial arts technique. At Baki's school, Yanagi pushes Goki back, and suddenly blood starts to fall from Goki's body. Yanagi shows them a claw-like knuckle that he is wearing on his hand and that he used to injure Goki, while Goki tells him that there are 2 of them against him. Baki agrees to fight with him, and they both take Yanagi on together. They coordinate together to beat Yanagi, and Goki then holds Yanagi tightly so that Baki can finish him off. When Baki comes near him, Yanagi kicks him back and then jumps behind Goki, essentially choking him. He jumps away from him, and Goki warns Baki that Yanagi's special technique is poison. Yanagi explains to them that his martial arts technique is called Way of Void, and he asks them what the most poisonous gas is. He slowly starts approaching Baki as he tells him about the different types of poisonous gases, and when he steps near him, he palms Baki's face while Baki doesn't move an inch. A group of doctors approach a prisoner who has been injured in a prison brawl, and one of the doctors comments that the prisoner has nerve damage due to lack of oxygen, while the other prisoner has managed to escape somehow. Suddenly the fatso prisoner wakes up and starts crying as he has visions of someone face-palming him. Baki collapses on the ground, and Yanagi declares that he uses oxygen as his poison. He explains to Goki that normally people breathe in a 21% oxygen environment, however if someone breathes air which has less than 6% of the oxygen, they will instantly lose consciousness and collapse. He then explains his martial art that allows him to concentrate 6% of oxygen in his palm, and he demonstrates it by a hole in the wall which breaks due to lesser oxygen. Suddenly the police arrive, so Yanagi kicks Baki in the chest, which restores his oxygen, and runs away. Baki wakes up and Goki tells him that he has lost. Tokugawa gathers the underground fighters, and when he learns about Baki's defeat, he starts whining about how he never expected his underground fighters to be defeated. He keeps ranting so much that Hanayama tells him to shut up, and Tokugawa starts crying because he feels very disappointed at the outcome. Baki starts to walk out, and just then, Dorian also walks in. He has a bucket of gasoline in his hands and he takes out a lighter, but just then, Orochi walks inside. He takes his lighter from him and also flips the bucket of gasoline over him, which drenches him in gasoline. He then asks him in return whether he likes gasoline, and kicking him down, he teases him about lighting him on fire. He then walks back on the pretense that he won't make such dishonorable choices, but suddenly he turns around and throws the lighter on him. Dorian starts to cry and scream as his body is lit with fire, and Orochi asks his father Doppo whether he made the right choice. Doppo replies that killing his enemy with dishonorable means is justified, and meanwhile Dorian's fire is extinguished, due to which he lies collapsed on the floor. Doppo goes on to explain that he can use normal day weapons like a belt or a pencil, but when he takes on such random weapons, his martial arts isn't justified. Suddenly the barbecued Dorian jumps up and asks the fighters about who will take him on. Doppo steps forward, but Orochi stops him and introduces everyone to Kado, who is a former student of Shinshinkai karate who prefers to do real fighting rather than train in a dojo. Kado asks Doppo who cut his hand, and he then punches Dorian right in the face. Dorian doesn't seem to be listening to him, so he jumps over him and even cuts off his ear, which surprises everyone. He shows everyone a thin fishing wire which he happens to have in his pocket, and Orochi tells Doppo that he considers Kado his master and that he prefers his fighting style superior to him. Doppo declares that he will show him the true essence of fighting, and he then kicks Dorian on his back. Suddenly Dorian gets up and swings his invisible wire around Orochi and Kado, but nobody is able to see the wire. The wire starts to pull two of the fighters and Doppo punches down on the wire. He explains that true martial arts allow the fighter to turn their hands into weapons as well, and he tells the other how he has broken the wire. Suddenly Dorian spits out a grenade and throws it towards everyone, which causes a sudden explosion. Tokugawa wakes up and discovers that he was thrown out just when the grenade's pin was pulled. He also discovers that everyone has disappeared, and he repeatedly asks the authorities where everyone has gone. Dorian meanwhile walks through a market and he walks to a deserted street. He spots a cover on the road and slides it away, only to jump inside. He then starts to fall down, but at the last moment he pushes himself against the wall and carefully plops down to a neatly made bunker. He tends to his wounds there and puts a bandage on his ear. Suddenly, Kata shows up, which doesn't surprise him since he knew he was being followed. He tells Kata that he is not the man who will show him defeat. Kata attacks him, but he avoids him, and he then knocks down many of his alcohol bottles. He then puts his hands in grease tubs and slathers the broken glass shards on his fists. Kata refuses to put his hands into grease since he wants to fight his own way, and instead throws a large barrel on Dorian, but Dorian just kicks it back towards him. Kata dodges the barrel and Dorian then attacks him, which wounds his foot. Dorian tries to punch him again, but this time Kata gets hit by shards of glass from Dorian's fists that send him reeling back. Dorian calls him a second-rate fighter, while Kata finally starts to feel motivated to fight. They both resume their fight, in which Kata tries to land a kick on Dorian while Dorian grabs him back and smashes a bottle on his head. He then punches his face, due to which the glass shards slice his face up, and Dorian then starts to sing an obnoxious little song. He resumes beating Kata left and right, even punching his face up, and Kata tells him that he has had nothing in his life other than karate. He tells him that his masters have told him that karate only involves using hands, but to him karate has always been just a tool. He then breaks a couple of bottles, which sends glass shards into the air, and kicks Dorian with some bottles as well. Dorian stumbles back and he takes the chance to beat him up more. He thinks he should finish him off, but Dorian adopts a martial arts stance which stops him for a moment. He then lunges at him as he kicks his knee and punches his face. He proceeds to crush his nuts and gouge his eyes out as well, but suddenly the illusion breaks and Dorian is standing right behind him. Dorian explains that he had hypnotized him to think such things, and he then punches him hard in the face. Dorian then throws his thin wire around Kata's neck, and when Kata tries to attack him next, Dorian pulls at the wire, which cuts at Kata's neck and blood starts sprouting from his neck. Kata then passes out on his own pool of blood. At a training dojo, a fatso-looking fighter practices martial arts, and he slices his punching bag as well. He then discovers Kata's injured body inside the punching bag, which shocks him, and soon an ambulance arrives to take it away. After some time, Orochi tells his group of students about the list of injuries that were inflicted on Katu, including fractured skull, multiple fractured bones and ribs, and he tells them to share Dorian's picture with all branches of Shinshinkai Dojo so that any one of their pupil can discover where he is and take revenge for Katu. Meanwhile, Dorian is having dinner in a fancy restaurant when a waiter approaches him and asks him how the food is using his real name. He explains that 1 million pupils of Shinshinkai Karate are now his enemies, and Dorian leaves the restaurant to face a group of fighters. He takes a taxi and the driver turns out to be a Shinshinkai fighter as well. Dorian thinks of fighting his way out, but the driver tells him that a whole bunch of his colleagues are following their car and that he is surrounded by Shinshinkai fighters wherever he goes. Dorian doesn't resist and he gets taken to an empty amusement park where he learns that hundreds of fighters are surrounding him. They ask him to enter the amusement park on his own, and he tells them to fight him using Shinshinkai rules. One of them starts fighting him, but he can't lay a finger on Dorian, and Dorian instead finishes him with one move. He then walks inside after telling everyone that they can't defeat him. Inside the amusement park, he meets the manager of the park, Ashida, who holds his hand and shows him the amusement rides. Dorian then starts to ride on the rides one by one, but suddenly a fighter appears and tries to attack him. The attacker turns out to be Atsushi, who is the third Dan student of Shinshinkai Dojo, and Dorian feels excited to take him on since they both have the same size. Atsushi punches him and Dorian attacks him in the gut. Atsushi gives a few punches in return and suddenly Dorian turns around and starts to run away. Atsushi of course follows him and they both keep running till they reach a roller coaster which starts to run. Soon the roller coaster starts to ride upwards and Dorian asks Atsushi whether he is truly ready for Kata's sake, who is his friend. The coaster rides upwards and Atsushi notices that they are both at a very large height, which means any one of them can die if they fall. The coaster continues to ride upwards while Dorian warns him of the dangers of such heights. Suddenly the coaster dips downwards and Atsushi notices that Dorian is gone. Dorian then jumps behind Atsushi and chokes him. He throws him on the seat and the coaster heads to the circular motion tracks where Dorian thinks there will be a climax. Dorian then attacks him, but suddenly due to the movements of the coaster, he falls sideways on the coaster seat. Atsushi recalls when Doppo taught him a specific martial arts stance known as sanchin, which was used by pirates to remain stable on ships. He uses the same stance to be stable and he then attacks Dorian. He lands a few punches, but Dorian then lunges at him and jumps with him in the air. At the last moment, Atsushi flips him on the backside so that Dorian will land first, but Dorian uses his spider web wire to stop his movements while Atsushi falls hard on the ground. Dorian then gets up while Atsushi lies battered and bloodied on the ground. Orochi approaches with his two friends and tells him that his life is meaningless. Dorian then asks Retsu whether he thinks the same, and Retsu recalls his past in which his master took a martial arts test of his pupils in which they all failed because they couldn't produce waves by punching a steel plate. The master then showed them how to make a water move, but just then Retsu barged in and punched the other side steel plate, due to which a large water wave was created. His water wave collided with his master's and he then asked his master why he wouldn't let him take the test. His master asked him to follow him and he took him to a room which even the master hadn't visited in 40 years. A wooden door came into view and his master exerted all efforts to break the door. The door opened into a cave and the master revealed that the cave was actually built by the previous KO with his martial art using his own hands and feet. Retsu recalled how he visited a room with his master once very long ago in which his master showed him several spherical rocks that were made by a person with his own hand. Retsu then demanded to meet this person, but his master told him that the person's death had been foretold. In the present, Retsu realizes that the rock shaper was actually Dorian. Retsu tells Dorian that it's an honor to meet him and Dorian tells him that after he left the Holy Temple 40 years ago, he learned that the strongest Chinese fighter would soon be born 10 years later, who is actually Retsu. He then asks him to fight him in a duel and Retsu, who was the last and third KO, tells him that they can't fight each other since they belong to the same school. Orochi steps forward to fight him instead and Doppo tells him that he has got a bigger revenge against him, so it's his fight. He starts taking off his clothes only to reveal an ugly-looking bright orange short that is infamous for a fighter. The others realize that the legend in which a fighter took on a Siberian tiger and won was real and that Doppo was actually the fighter. Doppo admits it and he then attacks Dorian. Dorian easily blocks all of his attacks and suddenly Doppo punches him in the face using his hand that Dorian had cut before. Doppo recalls that right after his hand was cut, he went to an underground clinic to a doctor that he was familiar with and he performed surgery on his hand without any anesthesia, in which he stitched up his bones, veins, muscles and skin one by one. He then waited 3 weeks for his hand to heal properly, after which he could move properly, and in the present, Dorian takes off his clothes to fight seriously. Doppo punches him in the stomach and Dorian spits out a bottle that breaks to reveal acid. Doppo ignores this and attacks him again. They both continue to fight each other and meanwhile Baki enjoys his little date with Koju. She comments that they have been hanging out a lot lately and that Baki will soon get tired of her, but Baki assures her that he is crazy for her and will never get tired of her. They both share a long kiss in which Koju is unable to breathe and later Baki takes her home while Baki's dad watches them from a distance. Doppo and Dorian continue their battle in which they are both equally competing with each other and Dorian then tells him that he will lose because he only gave his life to learn karate. He then starts doing a special kind of kata dance and Doppo takes this chance to throw one small pebble at Orochi as well as Dorian. Orochi simply catches it while it disappears when it reaches Dorian. Dorian then shows the crushed pebble in his hand and he blows it into Doppo's eyes as he attacks him again. They both begin fighting again and this time Doppo beats Dorian's, but as he kicks and punches him left and right. He thinks to himself that there is no way a Chinese master like Dorian is so weak, and in reality Dorian just stands simply while Doppo fights an imaginary fighter. Retsu concludes that Dorian must be using some kind of hypnotic technique that allows him to hypnotize his opponents, and when Dorian approaches Doppo to finish him off, suddenly Doppo kicks him in the chin. He begins beating him again and they all realize that even though Doppo is still under the hypnotic influence, he has matched the movement of the real and imaginary Dorian into one. He continues to senselessly beat Dorian up and Dorian takes out a blade but Doppo stops him again. Dorian then wonders whether his time to face defeat for the first time ever has come. Doppo continues to punch and kick him and he punches his chest so many times that finally Dorian's sternum breaks. He then breaks his knees and Dorian falls down as he thinks whether his end has come. He starts to tremble as well but Doppo doesn't land the finishing blow, instead he waits for another person who will take his life. Soon Katu is rolled in a wheelchair and after a moment his doctor also arrives at the venue. His doctor scolds him for moving Katu around and he threatens to call the police but Doppo tells him that Katu has come to fight the white ugly man. Suddenly Katu gets up and despite being unconscious he walks slowly over to Dorian. Doppo comments that his fighting spirit is awake and just when it looks like Katu is about to land the finishing blow, Dorian yells out aloud that he has accepted defeat. He starts to cry like a wuss and the fight gets concluded. Later the doctor observes that Dorian's hand's X-ray is showing a weird-looking explosive device and meanwhile Dorian walks over to Katu's room despite his broken legs and arms. He tells Katu that he has already landed the finishing blow on him and he then escapes out of the window. Doppo arrives home and wonders whether his wife Natsu will be surprised to see his new hand. He goes inside only to discover that the things inside his house are destroyed and just then someone smashes an explosive into his face. Doppo collapses on the ground while Dorian starts to sing an obnoxious song as he holds his torn-up hand. Baki takes Koju to their home and she tells him that she wants to stay together with him forever. In the end he chickens out since he actually wants to invite her to his place and they both kiss again. She also hesitates to ask him the same question and soon she heads back home. Dorian meets up with Retsu and asks him what true strength is. He tells him true strength is the ability to overcome one's desires and he also tells him that even though he has never been defeated he has never won in life either. Dorian bursts out laughing and he confesses that he wants to defeat Retsu. They both lunge at each other to punch the other one and Retsu then punches Dorian straight into his grave. Later a horde of police cars escort Dorian's ambulance and the cops whisper about how dangerous Dorian is. Retsu assures them that Dorian is harmless and just then Dorian gets up. He starts to look at the passing lights outside the car and he tells the others that he wants a lot of candies but his parents don't let him have any candy. Apparently after realizing that he has never won in life his brain decided to destroy his ego. Retsu then tells him that he will buy him all the candy he wants. Koju arrives home and Baki then goes to the same home 10 minutes later. Soon Koju changes into her PJs and she starts thinking whether she should go to Baki's room. A noise comes from outside of her window and when she opens it, Sikorsky sneaks inside and threatens her to keep quiet. He warns her that he will kill her and her mom if she screams for help and she tells him that she believes him but she believes in someone else too. Just then she screams for Baki and before Sikorsky can lay a hand on her, Baki jumps inside the window and attacks Sikorsky. Koju's mom rushes inside too and Baki tells Sikorsky that he shouldn't have crossed this line. He headbutts him and then throws him outside. He tells Koju to wait for him but when he jumps outside he discovers that Sikorsky is not lying on the ground. He then rushes inside but Sikorsky seems to have already abducted Koju. At the Tokyo Metropolitan Headquarters, 6 powerful figures who are the representatives of the United Nations, America and England meet up and Commissioner Sonoda briefs them that he has already captured 2 of the escaped prisoners. The Russian representative tells the FBI director that he has heard about the prisoner Oliva in Arizona who comes in and goes out according to his own wishes and who could be used to fight against the remaining escaped convicts but FBI Director Allen doesn't agree to his wishes. Soon Commissioner Sonoda goes to America where he meets the Arizona prison's warden Michael and he directly takes him to the Arizona prison to meet with Olive. He explains that he is working on Oliva's orders and that Oliva is just a prisoner according to the state. Sonoda gets taken to the prison which seems like a proper prison according to him with its tight security and many checkpoints. Michael then asks him to go inside the door by himself according to Oliva's orders and when Sonoda enters the door, he finds himself in a spacious luxurious corridor which is even air-conditioned. Sonoda soon arrives in the room where Oliva is situated and Oliva welcomes him inside / he offers him beer to drink and starts smoking hand-rolled cigars. Sonoda finds all of this very shocking along with the rich interior of the room and Olive just tells him to relax. He explains to him that he is living so luxuriously because he is an accomplished hunter who can capture any criminal that he wants. He goes on to say that letting him capture criminals is much wiser than keeping him as a criminal and Sonoda wonders how it's possible. Oliva then gets a phone call and he tells Sonoda that he will show him a live case. He takes him outside where a helicopter is waiting for them and Sonoda even sees that the convicts have made a painting in Oliva's honor. The helicopter takes them both to a hostage site where one person has taken groups of people prisoner and the police share that the perpetrator is asking to see Olive. When Olive arrives, he tells the police to leave the matter to him and he then simply walks inside. He comes across the perpetrator Jeff, who was a former police officer himself, and when he was side hustling for money 20 years ago, Oliva had beaten his legs and arms, due to which he has come back now to take revenge. Oliva takes off his clothes on his orders and Jeff then shoots a shotgun on him endlessly, but the bullets barely touch Oliva's thick muscles. Jeff takes out a samurai sword and tries to stab him, but the sword gets stuck in Oliva's chest. Oliva then punches him hard, which sends him flying outside the building. Jeff dies before he has even hit the ground and Oliva tells the police to call him whenever they need him. He and Sonoda head back to the Arizona prison where Oliva has round after round of steak with wine. He eats so much that plates get piled up and afterwards he starts smoking again, while Sonoda notices that his injuries from the shotgun bullets seem to be almost healed too. Oliva then takes him to show his book collection and he tells him that he wants to catch other criminals because he cannot bear that they have more freedom than he has. Soon Sonoda takes him to Japan where Oliva rides in a luxurious plane and they both arrive in Tokyo. On the way, Oliva tells Sonoda that he wants to be left alone for a while and then jumps out of the moving car. Meanwhile, Orochi learns about the whereabouts of Baki's girlfriend, which shocks him, and at the same time Sikorsky comments to Baki's father Yujiro that he didn't expect him to lure out Baki with such cowardly moves. He even thinks of fighting him and Yujiro welcomes the fight, but Sikorsky simply sits down. Suddenly Yujiro stops his leg, which was coming at him, to kick him under the table, and before he can do anything, Oliva also arrives at the venue. Sikorsky realizes that he has got a chance to fight the world's strongest man and the world's freest convict, and just when he gets ready to fight, Baki bursts in with Orochi. He sees Koju in her undergarments and he flies towards Sikorsky in rage. He punches and kicks him so much that he gets pushed against the glass. He then kicks him over the edge, which sends Sikorsky flying into the air, and Oliva congratulates him on his first real fight. He then lunges at Oliva next and he starts kicking and punching him. He punches Oliva under the chin, but Oliva doesn't budge at all and he then jumps back. Suddenly Sikorsky jumps back from where he fell and he tells the others about how he escaped the Russian prison by climbing through the missile launcher with his bare hands. They both fight each other and Sikorsky throws a bunch of glass on his face to distract him. He then puts a thumbtack on his hand and kicks him hard with both his legs. Suddenly police barges into the room and Sikorsky jumps down the building again. Police rush to cover Koju up and tend to Baki's wounds, but he tells them that he is alright. Later Sikorsky is admiring his body in a mirror of an abandoned building when suddenly Baki shows up behind him. He doesn't even let him wear his pants, rather he kicks him hard. They both start fighting, but Baki dominates the fight as he kicks Sikorsky like he is his personal punching bag. He even puts a bucket around his head and punches it endlessly. Sikorsky collapses on the ground and Oliva walks in the room. He tells Baki that Sikorsky is his prey, but when he steps near, Baki punches him instead. His punch doesn't seem to have any effect and Sikorsky suddenly jumps to his feet. He attacks Oliva, who doesn't budge from his spot, and he then assaults his chest with a series of punches that don't affect Oliva at all. Oliva then punches him so powerfully that he gets sent flying outside. Oliva hands over Sikorsky's body to the police and tells them to sit back while he will capture the last two escaped convicts as well. Sonoda doesn't get assured by this and Baki comments to Oliva that he seems really strong. He asks him what he eats to maintain such a body, but Oliva doesn't give him any proper response. Later Oliva searches about the remaining convicts on the internet in the police station and a female officer brings him coffee. She inquires about Doyle and suddenly she attacks from behind. Turns out it was actually Doyle himself in a female outfit and he manages to scratch Oliva's face sneakily. Oliva casually straightens the chair and locks the door. He tells Doyle that he is really excited to fight him, and just when Oliva gets ready to fight him, suddenly he becomes dizzy and falls down. Doyle explains that the blade in his elbow has the same kind of tranquilizer that is given to death row prisoners at the time of execution, and he then uses his heel to kick Oliva's face, which makes him bleed even more. Oliva starts to feel awake due to this and Doyle then lunges at him as he kicks him in the face. Oliva falls down on the floor again, but this time he grabs Doyle's leg and after getting up, he starts to spin him around the room like he is some kind of rag doll. He smashes him on the floor and the building even shakes slightly due to the impact. Some officers come to inquire whether Oliva is alright and he assures them that everything is alright in his room. Doyle attacks him again by kicking him in the face and he even stabs him in the stomach. Just then Sonoda arrives at his room along with Goki and they both find Oliva alone in the room along with a lot of blood on the floor. Oliva tells them that he tried to persuade a female police officer but she attacked him in return. He even shows them the stab wound in his stomach and he tells Sonoda that the knife can't possibly damage his internal organs since his muscles are too thick. He already seems to know who Goki is and he asks him whether Goki's particular martial arts technique called Aiki can compete well against muscular strength. Oliva then shakes hands with him and tries to assert strength on him, but Goki in return turns him around and makes him fall on his knees. Goki even twists his finger around like a little naughty boy when they are walking in the hallway, and Oliva notices a judo practicing room, so he comments to Sonoda that he can probably beat everyone there. Sonoda likes the challenge and he takes him inside to meet his colleagues who are all practicing judo. He wears the judo uniform which he finds too tight, so he tears it off and he then declares that he will reach the level 5 Dan in judo. Sonoda explains to him that getting judo belts requires him to pass official tests, and soon Olive starts practicing judo with some officers to get a feel of it. He beats the first officer and even makes the second person spin around for fun. He then asks Sonoda whether he will give him the black belt if he beats all the officers in judo. Oliva throws the police officer in the air and he lands on his chest, so Sonoda tells him that he hasn't won the match since judo required the person to land on their back instead. Oliva then throws the same person on his back and one by one he starts doing the same to all the officers. Meanwhile, the police officers feel like they are pushing against a very old thick tree since they are unable to move Olive at all, while Oliva just grabs each one of them and hurls him over his head. Oliva then asks Sonoda whether he has to continue this show and he insists that he should give him the black belt right away, but then Goki steps forward to fight with him in a judo match. Olive hurls him over his head as well, but Goki just lands lightly on his feet and doesn't get turned around. Oliva declares to give up and he shows everyone his wrist, which Goki managed to dislocate. Goki then throws him the black belt and tells him that it's endorsed by him. In the Shinshinkai dojo, an underground fighter named Kosho shows his superb martial art, which allows his hands to be used as blades and cut even paper. Orochi compliments his technique and asks him to teach the others too. Later, Kosho tells him that he wants to know Doyle's location as a payment and that he considers it a disgrace that he wasn't informed about the convicts originally. Orochi seems to be aware of Doyle's whereabouts due to his large network of Shinshinkai pupils, and soon they both reach the hotel where Doyle is staying at. Inside the hotel, Doyle shows the blades that are embedded into his elbows, knees, feet and hands to the captain of US Navy Gary, who is also Yujiro's friend. He compliments the designs and they both discuss how humans go as far as to have surgery to embed pipes into their body. Just then, Kosho comes inside and pushes Gary aside. He attacks Doyle, who gets knocked out ruthlessly but still doesn't let his guard up. Doyle slowly approaches Kosho and tries to elbow him, but Koshi once again lands a critical hit on the same spot as before. Doyle is knocked down again and Kosho tells him to remain on the ground, otherwise he will keep getting beaten up. Baki and Koju skip stones on a riverbed and he asks her why she isn't mad at him. Just then, Hanayama appears and asks him whether he wants Koju in his life or if any woman will do it for him. Baki doesn't give any proper answer, which makes Hanayama comment that he probably doesn't want to answer in front of Koju. Baki tries to hit him and Hanayama in return throws him in the water. Kosho punches Doyle again, which knocks him down, and he then approaches to kick him. Just when he is near him, Doyle punches him hard, which sends Kosho reeling back. Koju scolds Hanayama for not considering her feelings and she even punches him. Baki then holds her back and Hanayama asks him whether he really wants a future with her. She throws a stone at him again and he then leaves them to their issue. Kosho puts back his dislocated jaw in place while Doyle switches on all of his blades to fight Kosho. He slowly approaches Kosho but stops when he comes near him, and Kosho wonders why he isn't attacking him. Kosho in return lunges at him and just then Doyle makes an explosive go off on his chest, due to which Kosho is sent reeling back. He collapses on the ground and Gary tells Doyle that he doesn't fight manly since he uses blades and explosives to help him. Doyle explains that he is not a fighter but still he wins every time and that he has never been defeated before. Baki thinks about the incident with Koju at night and just then Koju arrives to meet him. She tells him that she cannot stop thinking about him and he shares that he feels the same. She then leaves him even though he wants to tell her to stay for the night. He goes to sleep but he still keeps thinking about her and soon Koju comes back sneakily inside his room. She takes off her clothes and slips in the futon with him while he keeps going crazy over her like a hormonal teenager. His heart is about to burst while Koju thinks about how wise Baki's back is. Koju moves near him and when Baki turns around, he suddenly discovers that Yujiro is watching them both in his room. He suddenly flips around Koju and shuts her mouth to stop her from screaming. He then tells Yujiro that it's bad taste to watch his own son, and Yujiro advises him that he shouldn't take advice from the others. He tells Baki to do it with Koju countless times till he becomes sick of it, and he advises Koju to let him do it endlessly too. After sprouting nonsense, he goes away and Baki tells Koju that he is ready now. He assures her that his words aren't affected by his dad's advice and he arranges for them to meet the next time. Retsu eats dinner at a restaurant and he notices a fat-looking dude eating a whole roasted pig all by himself. The guy also comes to meet Retsu and turns out to be Baki's brother Jack, who has jacked himself with steroids and medicines due to which he has such a huge size. They both recall how Jack forced his way in the last tournament inside the arena only to face Baki himself and how Baki defeated him by using the last ounce of his strength. Retsu notes that Jack seems even bigger and larger now, and Jack then walks away from him. Dr. Kureha visits the hospital to see his brother Kosho was roasted earlier by Doyle and compliments the hospital's efforts to restore his brother even though he is a world-renowned doctor himself. He later meets up with Jack Hanma and compliments the limb lengthening surgery that he got done to increase his height. When Jack was defeated last time, he asked Kureha to perform limbs lengthening surgery on 2 of his calves and 2 of his legs, and he then endured endless pain to recover from those surgeries. Meanwhile, Retsu is going back home from shopping when he coincidentally meets Doyle on the elevator. They both wonder whether they should fight each other, and Doyle then invites him to have a drink with him. They both take a drink and suddenly Doyle blows fire at him while Retsu in return throws a knife at his eye. Doyle realizes that Retsu wants to take revenge for Kosho, and just then Retsu also blows fire at him. He starts to scream in pain and Retsu then blows out the fire with an extinguisher. He shows him his jacket, which is filled with knives, and he then starts throwing knives at him again and again till Doyle's body is filled with knives. Doyle runs outside and Retsu stops him with his whip. Doyle spits blood in his eye and he in return uses his whip to constrict his body even more. He then takes out a huge blade and slashes his chest. Doyle starts to run away as he wonders whether he is going to be finally defeated. Retsu runs after him and Doyle uses a smoke bomb to get away from him. Retsu then discovers a gutter entrance on the road, but just then Doyle sneaks up behind him and attacks his neck. Retsu doesn't get affected by his attack and he instead throws countless punches at him. Doyle admits his defeat and Retsu takes off the knives that he had embedded in his body. He then waits for the final blow, but Retsu doesn't move and Doyle reminds him that a lot of his friends suffered a lot because they couldn't make the final blow. He even shoots something at him, but Retsu in return kicks him in the face. Once again he kicks and punches him so much that Doyle is battered. Suddenly Jack arrives behind Retsu and injects him with something that makes him pass out. He tells Doyle to get some rest and that he will fight with him soon. He walks away and some thugs discover Retsu's body in the street. They decide to steal Retsu's wallet, so Doyle walks back to them and beats them up. They run away from him and Doyle starts to walk away again, but a wild dog approaches Retsu's body. Doyle walks back again and makes the dog run away. He then decides to keep a watch over Retsu's body, and the next morning Retsu wakes up to discover that Doyle had been watching over him despite being at the brink of death. Doyle seems frozen on the spot, but he senses that he is alive, so he binds him on his back and runs towards the hospital. He crosses all the roads and even runs over the river because he can't afford to be late to the Shinshinkai dojo for Doyle's treatment. Later Doyle wakes up to discover that he was passed out for nights and that the Shinshinkai dojo students even gave blood to save him. Retsu feeds him some food that he prepared especially to heal him and he thanks Retsu as well. Later Retsu returns to his room and he discovers that Doyle is gone. Sometime later Doyle returns to the dojo and he thanks all the students for giving blood to him. He then tells them that they are his opponents and he will bury all of them. Orochi takes him on and he asks to put on his fighting suit first. He then wears an aluminum suit and spreads some kind of dust into the whole air. Suddenly everything explodes and the ambulance rushes to the Shinshinkai dojo to deal with the fire and injured students. Doyle casually walks to the nearby street and Doppo stops him there. Doppo tells him that he has already been defeated by Retsu and Oliva, but Doyle argues with him that things weren't settled previously. Still, Doppo believes that Doyle is a coward who runs away from a fight every time he loses, and Doyle starts to feel insulted by his comments. Doppo takes him to an arena and asks him to use any weapon he can use to fight with him, but Doyle argues with him that he won't use explosives against an elderly man like him. Doppo suggests that they can fight using their bare fists, but he doesn't believe that Doyle will ever fight fairly against him, and Doyle assures him that he will fight with his bare fists. Just then Doyle attacks him and Doppo knocks him out using a karate move. Later Doyle wakes up in the Shinshinkai dojo and faces Orochi, who has second-degree burns. Orochi knocks him out again by kicking him in the face and tells him that he will keep it up till Doyle can admit that he has been defeated. After some time, Doyle regains consciousness and he attacks Orochi again. In return, Orochi kicks and pushes him to the oblivion, which makes him pass out again. Koju leaves a note on Baki's doorstep telling him to find her, and he runs with the speed of light to find her. Meanwhile, Koju takes some food to the rundown apartment where she went with Baki 2 years ago, and she imagines that Baki will come to the apartment after he is unable to find her. To her surprise, he is already there and she asks him whether they are really going to do it together. She thinks that doing it with Baki will make him stronger, and he tells her that he has never wanted to become the world's strongest person. She then tries to make some excuses to delay being with Baki, but he approaches her and hugs her. Doyle wakes up again as Orochi is getting a drop from his doctor and they both eat food together. Orochi then puts him down once more and tells him to admit defeat, but Doyle still doesn't say it. Orochi hits his face with a low strike that shakes the room and breaks Doyle's face, which makes him pass out once again. Doyle wakes up many hours later and Orochi's pupil tells him that Orochi has accepted defeat. He believed that he couldn't beat him up even more and that his inability to make Doyle accept defeat means that he has lost. Sometime later Orochi leaves his apartment and discovers that Doyle is happily waiting for him. Tokugawa visits a dojo in which he discovers a lot of foreign fighters, and one of them tells him that their master Konomatsu is very famous internationally and has got many awards and certificates for recognition as well. Tokugawa then meets Konomatsu, who seems to be a master of the Way of Void, which Yanagi excels at, and Konomatsu shows him a technique through which he creates vacuum in his palm to raise a metal ball. He tells him that his best ever student was Yanagi, who could create vacuum in his hand, and that he was the one who had cut his arm too. Meanwhile, Yanagi holds a piece of paper using just his palm and Tokugawa asks Konomatsu about the poison hand, so Konomatsu questions if he is planning to assassinate someone. He says that Tokugawa still would not be able to do it even if he reveals how it's done, so he starts explaining how poison is first created by mixing insects and plants, and it is then added to sand to make it poisonous. After the sand is created, the person must continuously hit it day and night while taking the antidote after every 7 minutes, which is the most painful part of training the Way of the Void, and he further reveals that some people even cut off their hands due to the unbearable pain. He explains that the skin becomes poisonous after 5 days, and that's when the technique is completed. On the other side, Sonoda learns that Sikorsky has escaped from the detention facility, and he deduces that Sikorsky climbed down a 150-meter wall of concrete. Meanwhile, Baki and Koju make out as he notices her tears, which he finds very beautiful. Baki finds it extremely tense as he compares it with fighting and thinks about how he needs to do exactly what the other person's body wants, which is a complete opposite of fighting. They encounter Yanagi as soon as they come out, and Baki calls him kind for waiting for so long even though he could have attacked him. They decide to head to an open area to fight, and Yanagi thinks about how he no longer feels the softness of a young boy from Baki. They reach the open ground and Baki breaks his leg as soon as the fight begins before he bashes Yanagi's face in with a punch and a kick, which makes him collapse. On the other side, Konomatsu talks about how a whip is the most painful weapon, which makes a person's body die on its own to avoid the pain, and he shows how arms can be used as a whip too, but reveals that Yanagi is the only one who can perfectly do it. Meanwhile, Yanagi exposes Baki's muscles just by whipping at him once with his hands, and he does the same with his legs, which Baki tries to block, but his skin gets torn to shreds again. Baki reveals that Yujiro taught him the whip strike once too, and he whips Yanagi's stomach, which makes him scream in agony. He whips his face too, so Yanagi whips back and they exchange a few blows until Baki almost snaps his arm, but Sikorsky interrupts it. He tries to hit Baki's face with a kick, but Baki easily dodges it and mocks Sikorsky for not staying in the hospital. Sikorsky tries to hit Baki, but he misses, so Baki explains that he just needed to slightly turn his face to dodge Sikorsky's slow attack, and Yanagi tells Sikorsky that Baki is no longer a kid that they can handle, so they decide to team up against him. Baki tells Sikorsky and Yanagi that they can no longer beat him, and he calls it a hunch rather than confidence. Koju offers to fight as well, and he thanks her for worrying about him. He then confidently walks towards them and smashes both their faces, which puts them on their knees. He declares to beat them up till they cannot stand, and Koju thinks he has gone too far. Yanagi starts whining about how countless men have trained their whole lives to become strong, and he tells Baki that he seems to think that getting a woman has made him strong. Meanwhile, Yanagi wonders why his moves aren't working on Baki anymore, and he tries to attack him again, but Baki counters his fist. He kicks him again, and Sikorsky also lunges at him, but he ends up kicking Yanagi again. Baki puts both of them down, and just then Hanayama also walks towards Koju. He tells her that she has won since Baki has become stronger due to her, and Baki also meets him. He tells him that he seems to have gotten much stronger since the last time he saw him, and Baki tells him that he doesn't want to become the strongest as long as he can protect himself and Koju. Just then Yanagi and Sikorsky get up again, so Baki picks up Koju and runs away. Hanayama faces the two convicts and tells them that he is not fighting them either. Baki runs with Koju in his arms while Yanagi faces Sikorsky to fight him. He feels like he has been really humiliated, and he then starts to cry. Meanwhile, Orochi gets a shipping ticket to Doyle for a trip to the Middle East, and before they part ways, he teaches him a karate move as a sign of their new bond. Orochi then gives him his karate belt as a parting gift and leaves Doyle behind on the ship. Doyle then encounters Yanagi on the ship, who taunts him about befriending the enemy. He decides to teach him a lesson and both fight each other. Yanagi lightly punches Doyle's eyes which kill his vision and Doyle tries to guess where he is. Yanagi then jumps behind him and chokes him with the black belt that Orochi gifted him. Doyle punches him in the face and Yanagi throws him over the dock, due to which he starts choking even more because of the belt. Doyle climbs up and Yanagi attacks him with his sword, which gets blocked by the steel blades in Doyle's arms. Yanagi attacks him again and this time Doyle lets go, due to which he falls in the ocean. In the meanwhile, Russian champion fighter Alexander recalls how Sikorsky beat him up after he escaped from the Russian prison. At the same time, Sikorsky comes across Jack and he takes him to a washroom where they can fight without any disturbance. They both begin fighting each other and Sikorsky jumps up to hold a sprinkling jet nut. He holds on to it due to his impressive finger strength, and whenever Jack tries to get close to him he kicks him again and again. Finally Jack manages to wrench him away and he approaches him to beat him up even more. After some time they both head out where Sikorsky walks into a phone booth and Jack follows him inside. Jack goes into the phone booth to face Sikorsky, who says that his huge size will be a disadvantage for him in such a small space. He starts hitting Jack repeatedly until Jack finally fights back and lands a strong punch on Sikorsky's face, which topples the phone booth around. Sikorsky gets knocked out, so Jack steps out of the phone booth and meets Iguri, whose guys tie up the phone booth. He thanks Jack for helping him out while he recalls how Sikorsky humiliated him and left him to die. They put the phone booth in a truck and Sikorsky soon wakes up only to wonder what's going on. The truck finally opens and he gets shocked when he sees that he has been brought to an arena. Jack tells him to come out so they can finish their fight, and Tokugawa explains to Sikorsky that he can decide if he wants to fight or if he wants to run away. He reveals that the rules are to fight bare-fisted, but the whole audience is hoping that Sikorsky will break the rules and Sikorsky agrees to fight. Tokugawa leaves the arena and Sikorsky recalls how he told Iguri that a fighter must always be ready to fight. He rushes at Jack and attacks him repeatedly, but Jack throws him away easily. He takes a nail out of the barrier and Jack punches him into the crowd before telling him to come back into the arena. Sikorsky grabs a cane from an old man and tries to stab Jack with it, but it does not pierce Jack's skin, so he launches a surprise attack with the nail. Jack stops it with his teeth and spits it out after chewing it into a ball, but he starts walking out of the arena after it. Before leaving, he tells Sikorsky that he will be facing an opponent that he can handle, and Gaia, master fighter of the environment, steps into the arena. The audience gets shocked by the sudden appearance of an unknown man, and Tokugawa gets shocked that he is the Gaia he heard so much about, the same Gaia that almost drove Baki to his death during his training days. The audience boos him and chants for Jack to be brought back, which angers Gaia, so releases a loud scream which silences the audience. He tries to talk to Sikorsky but realizes that he must have gone deaf due to the scream, so he first waits for Sikorsky to regain his hearing and mentions how they can use anything they want in this fight. He throws a knife which cuts Sikorsky's ear and even shoots a gun, but throws it away before revealing that he will only be using the environment to fight. Gaia throws a bunch of sand at Sikorsky that hits him like a bunch of tiny bullets. The sand even flow to the audience side and it keeps hitting Sikorsky till Gaia runs out of it. Once the attack is done, Sikorsky realizes that the sand actually managed to damage him a lot, and up next Gaia starts to throw sand in the air. He makes a sand cloud and then disappears inside it. Sikorsky notices that he cannot spot Gaia and he begins to think that he has disappeared, but Gaia comes near him and tells him that he is camouflaging himself through sand. Sikorsky tries to recklessly ambush him, but he is unable to get a hold of him, and in return, Gaia pinches his nose. Sikorsky calls him a coward for not fighting like a man, and Gaia then kicks his jewels. He tells him that they are both fighting a battle to survive in the arena. Meanwhile, Goki issues a challenge to Yanagi to fight him to settle their score, and as Goki is walking on the street, he gets a vision of a huge door which indicates to him that he cannot win. The last time he had this vision was when he had to fight Jack Hanma in the underground tournament last time, and he was then totally defeated by him as well. Gaia continues to torment Sikorsky as he punches and kicks him by sneaking up on him from left and right, but Sikorsky is unable to defend himself since he can't spot him. Goki recalls the words of his master Kihei telling him that in future he won't be able to face anyone that he will lose against, and he wonders why he is having such a vision. Meanwhile, Yanagi comes across a Motobe Jojitsu fighter named Aizu Motobe who challenges him to a fight. He then attacks Yanagi with a sword and even knocks out a few of his teeth using a weapon. At the arena, Sikorsky starts getting attacked viciously by Gaia as the other person kicks him and tries to gouge his eyes out. He keeps getting attacked and Gaia tells him that he is attacking him after every 10 seconds, due to which Sikorsky starts anticipating his attacks. Gaia kicks him in the face and keeps beating the heck out of him after every 10 seconds. Soon Sikorsky cries in fear and he fearfully waits for the next attack to come. After he has been battered enough, he yells out that he has lost and asks Gaia to leave him alone, due to which Gaia officially wins the match. Yanagi takes out his pair of sickles to fight Modobe, who tells him that his technique has become useless due to relying too much on weapons. He rushes at him and somehow cuts his hand from his body. He is then about to attack him once again when Yujiro appears behind him and stops him. Modobe faces him with his sword, but Yujiro simply bends his sword with his bare hand. He breaks a piece of it and he then breaks another piece of it, which stuns Modobe into silence. Yujiro then walks up to Yanagi and tells him that he has lost. Yanagi starts ranting about how Yujiro is the world's strongest man and Yujiro ignores all of his sentiments. Yanagi then tells him that he can't tell that he has lost since he will be the one to decide that he has lost. Yujiro agrees to this reasoning and Goki then also joins the stage. He sees Yanagi's cut hand and declares that the match has been settled. Yujiro decides to leave, and before leaving, he smashes Yanagi's face into the ground as a way of telling him that he has truly been defeated now. Doyle rests in some deserted cave and he wonders why he still cannot see anything. Oliva joins him and tells him that he has been wanting to capture the runaway convicts, but he can see that Doyle's vision is lost. He grabs him and observes that Doyle must have gotten poisoned by some lethal poison due to which his vision has been affected. He then knees him hard in the stomach. In the meanwhile, Koju makes food for Baki, but he barely eats anything and she suggests that they should go to the hospital for treatment. At the same time, Oliva gets Doyle's blood tested for poison and the doctor tells him that they cannot figure out the exact position. Oliva reads the blood report and figures out the alkaline compound that is causing harm to Doyle. Koju notices that Baki's body has shrunk down a lot and she gets him admitted to a hospital. Baki's friends also get this news and Dr. Kureha then informs Koju that Baki cannot be saved and that it's a miracle that he is still alive. Koju runs outside the hospital in tears, and as she is crying, a black man approaches her. He notices that she seems really distressed, so she gives him a statue of his god and tells her that the person important to her will definitely be saved. The same guy goes to the nearby dojo where a fighting champion named Dave waits for him. Dave tells his fellows that he is waiting for a guy named Mr. who is a very different kind of fighter compared to him. Mr. arrives and Dave welcomes him with complete admiration. Mr. then changes into fighting getup and wears boxing gloves to fight Dave. Dr. Kureha tells Baki's friends, including Hanayama and Goki, that Baki has been infected with a lethal dose of poison and that he is very close to death. Mr. begins to fight Dave and he kicks him, which sends him flying to the other side of the ring. Dave then rushes at him to tackle him, but Mr. punches him twice so hard that he passes out on the spot. A Japanese journalist goes to a huge mansion to interview the 20th century's strongest man, Mr. Muhammad Ali, and the fighter asks him whether he knows Yujiro. At the hospital, Kureha discovers that Baki has left, and at home Koju scolds Baki for fleeing the hospital, but he tells her that it's his own fight. Meanwhile, Mr. Ali Jr., who is the son of original Mr. Muhammad Ali, meets up with Yujiro. In the past, Muhammad Ali Sr. won the championship and threw the gold medal away because he deemed it worthless. He even predicted his wins and insulted his opponents after winning each time. The Japanese journalist wonders why such a legend like him would ask him about Yujiro, and Ali begins to tell his story. Many years ago, Ali actually went to Japan to fight Iguri in a match, and he trained according to his usual regimen. One time he went running with his pro friends and one by one they all disappeared. Soon Ali also started to fear for his life when he sensed that some kind of best was near him, and just then, Yujiro approached him. He immediately put his guards up, even though his usual boxing style never included putting his guard up. He then tried attacking Yujiro many times, but all of his attacks were swiftly dodged. Yujiro then told him that boxing is not his real art and that he probably never even wanted to become a champion. Ali confirmed that this was true since no fighter could ever understand his dream, and Yujiro then asked to fight him with proper martial arts. Ali changed his stance and started kicking and punching him, but his moves only scratched Yujiro's clothes. Yujiro commented that Ali was unable to master his martial arts due to the 3 years break he took recently, and that he respects him even more because he has fought a lot to end poverty and racial discrimination. Ali did not believe this since he believed himself to be weak, and Yujiro still tried to convince him that he has been strong due to his morals and efforts. He declared that his dream is to become the world's strongest man, and Ali then requested him to meet his son. In the present, Baki goes to meet Ando in the Hida Mountains, who is a hunter and a warrior. He notices Baki's weight loss and asks him to take off his shirt. He then comments that Baki has probably been poisoned with a natural source poison, and he makes some kind of concoction for him to drink. Baki and Koju go out fishing, and later Baki drinks some more of his potion before heading to sleep, while Ando thinks that Baki has come too late. In the past, Yujiro meets Ali's son Junior Ali, and Ali shares that he was trying to perfect martial arts once upon a time, but after he was disbanded from practicing for 3 years, he lost his grip on his footwork, due to which his martial arts isn't as impressive. However, Junior Ali can fulfill his dream now. Junior punches Yujiro lightly so Yujiro flicks his finger at him which sends him rolling. Yujiro then tells him to stop crying and he comments that Ollie Jr. will one day become friends with his children too. In the present, Baki takes Koju to a cave filled with many skeletons and he shares that he promised to never get defeated in the cave 4 years ago. An ape called Yasha appears who was also a participant in the last tournament and Baki tells Koju that Yasha's parents were killed by Yujiro, due to which Baki has sworn to take revenge on their behalf. Later Retsu comes to meet Baki and he knocks him out by punching him. A Chinese helicopter then comes to pick them up as Ando hands over Baki to Retsu. Chinese warriors welcome Retsu and Tokugawa also comes to escort them. They fly him directly to China where Baki wakes up in the Belan tournament and an attendant gives him medicinal food to eat. Retsu requests his master to let Baki participate in the upcoming Chinese tournament and he tells him that Baki was the one who actually defeated him when he was 17 years old, so his master allows Baki to fight a fighter named Cho to test him out. Soon Baki faces Cho, who excels in the art of Dogon, which means he can carve out stone with his bare hands. He dodges all of Cho's attacks and manages to lift him up easily. He repeats this again and lifts him up, which makes him feel insulted. Cho tries to attack him and Baki almost kicks him as well, which makes Cho realize that he can be defeated easily. Cho admits his loss and Baki gets allowed to participate in the upcoming Raai Tournament, which is a famous Chinese tournament. Retsu shares with Baki that the tournament is held after every 100 years and it started after Chinese Kung Fu completely eliminated Roman martial arts many hundreds of years ago. Baki wonders whether he should even participate and they share that all Kiowas including Retsu will be participating. They also share that Yujiro is participating too. Soon Ollie Jr. arrives at the temple to participate in the tournament and he fights a temple warrior to prove his strength. He gets allowed to participate as well and Baki then tries to practice his martial arts but he keeps spitting out blood. Koju wishes him good luck and soon the Raai Tournament arrives in which 16 fighters will participate. Meanwhile, Ollie Jr. meets Yujiro who questions if he was able to complete the martial arts that his father was not able to, so Ollie Jr. suggests that Yujiro should face him to see. Yujiro warns him that he won't hold back and Ollie Jr. wears his gloves to unleash the first jab but Yujiro easily tears it. He tests Ollie Jr.'s speed and dodging and remarks that he is as good as his father, but he suddenly lies down on the ground. He explains that Muhammad Ali was the first person to lose against this move created by Iguri, so he wants to see if Ollie Jr. can defeat it, but Jr. leaves the room after saying that only a loser uses such a move, which means that he has already won. Yujiro bashes the door to chase after him but he's too late as Jr. has already left. After some time, Jr. arrives in China to participate in the Raai Tournament and Retsu's master makes him prove his strength against another fighter. The fighter uses the Iguri move but Jr. easily defeats him, and on the other side, two brothers declare that they will not hold back against each other if they come face to face in the tournament. After some time, the tournament finally begins and the 16 fighters are introduced. The first match is revealed to be between Retsu's master, Ryu, and Yujiro, but Yujiro is first asked to break a tower of tiles to prove his strength. Yujiro easily breaks all 40 by pushing down on them, so the two start fighting but Yujiro easily knocks Ryu down after tearing off his face. Retsu almost jumps in between but Ryu attacks again and Yujiro knocks him down once more. The next match is announced to be between Jr. and a martial artist named Joe, and Koju encounters Jr., who tells her that he will make sure Baki does not get hurt too much if they meet. He steps into the arena as the match begins and lands the first blow on Joe's family jewels, which make him roll around on the ground. Joe tries to attack again but Jr. dodges multiple attacks before landing a fast blow on the chin which knocks Joe down. The next match is announced to be between Baki and Lee, so Baki warms up while puking blood. Retsu tells him that Lee is the best poison hand user in China and that Baki is lucky because this fight might awaken his senses. Koju gets mad and punches him for treating Baki's life so lightly, but Baki calms her down. The fighters step into the arena and Baki's leg gets poisoned on the first attack, so he sucks the poison out himself. They engage in a close-quarter combat which leaves Baki exhausted, and Lee then launches a wave of attacks on him. Baki tries to unleash a fast attack but he falls down while puking blood, which falls down on him, and Koju cries when she witnesses this. Her tears fall on his face, after which he gets back up and Retsu excitedly explains that Lee's poison is cancelling Yanagi's poison. Yujiro explains that 7 scrolls for the poison hand were created in the past, but 5 opposing poison scrolls were also created that cancel out the original poison hands. Lee attacks again but Baki easily blocks him and breaks his fingers by punching them. He lands multiple attacks on Lee which leaves him unconscious, and the match ends in Baki's victory. Retsu gives Baki lots of food to eat, and after he is done, he tells Baki to drink 10 liters of water. He then mixes 4 kilos of fructose in the water and tells him that even though his poison has been neutralized he still needs to regain his strength. Baki drinks all the water and feels his body recovering at a very quick speed. A fighter named Kaku, who was the last Raai Tournament winner, meets Yujiro and taunts him for being a slave to his desires. The next day Kaku faces a Thai fighter Samwon who excels in Muay Thai and Chinese martial arts. Kaku pulls down his pants and flicks his family jewels, due to which Samwon collapses on the ground and Kaku gets declared as the winner. After the match, Yujiro makes fun of Samwon, due to which Samwon attacks him and Yujiro then plummets him to the ground. Two twin fighters come across Retsu and Koja leaning over Baki's body, from which steam is coming out, and Retsu comments that Baki is recovering. Suddenly, Baki wakes up with full energy and feels completely revived. The next day, a fighter named Yo faces the warrior Dorian, who is escorted by Oliva. Dorian seems a bit psycho, but still Yo takes him on as he kicks and punches him. He defeats him fully, and afterwards Dorian gets up when Oliva feeds him some candy. Yo then tells Oliva that he cannot accept the results, and Oliva offers to fight him instead. He grabs Yo's hand to prove his strength to him, and Yo accepts his proposal. They both fight each other officially, and Yo tells Oliva to make the first move since he thinks Oliva is too weak. Oliva then punches him and cushions him to the ground. In the next match, a Japanese fighter named Jaku faces Chinese fighter Jukian, who specializes in using the elements of fists, spirit, and earth together. He lands a punch on Jaku, and just then, Baki challenges Yujiro to fight him. They both recall how Baki was beaten by his father 4 years ago. Meanwhile, Jaku offers a teaching job to Jukian to teach his 24,000 pupils. Jaku then puts him down and dislocates his shoulder. Yujiro pushes Baki against the wall and throws him so hard that he flies out the wall. Baki then runs back to attack him, but find that Yujiro is already gone. Retsu's pupil tells Retsu that Ryu will survive due to surgery, and Retsu then heads to face his next opponent named Sun, who is known for his powerful grip. Retsu grabs his hand as the match starts and forces him down. He then tells him to give up his titles, and after the match, he tells Kaku that he is disappointed by the fighters. Kaku slices off the hands of the Chinese ministry members, and he presents two new fighters named Shunsei and Shobun to fight in the arena. He then takes out another Chinese fighter to make space for the new two fighters, and the Japanese fighters get presented with the condition that the 5 of them have to fight with the 5 Chinese fighters. They all become shocked to hear the names of Shunsei and Shobun, who are known warriors, but ultimately they all agree. Baki agrees to team up with his dad, and Jaku warns Oliva that the new fighter Shobun is a much-known Taiwan underground fighter who has never been defeated in 25 years. Oliva already seems to know all about him, and soon he faces Shobun in the arena. He attacks him, but Shobun blocks his attack with one hand. He continues attacking him, but Jaku smoothly blocks all his attacks. Oliva stumbles a bit and mocks Ron for keeping his hands in his pocket. He tries to attack, but Ron's attack reaches him first despite his hand being in his pocket, so Oliva starts copying him by putting his hands into his pants. Yujiro tells Baki to watch closely, and Ron attacks Oliva after taking his hands out, but Oliva fails to respond. He mocks Oliva for being too slow and attacks slowly, but Oliva fails to block it this time too. He puts his hands back in and asks Oliva to attack him as he can still reach Oliva faster. Yujiro explains that putting his hands may seem like a handicap, but it's his ready position which allows him to be faster than his opponents. Oliva tries to attack, but Ron quickly pokes his eyes before landing multiple blows which knock Oliva to the ground. He gets back up and puts his hands into his pants again, which angers Ron, so he launches multiple blows, but Oliva knocks him down with a single smash. Ron gets back up and starts a hand pocket showdown, which he wins because he lands multiple attacks before Oliva can do anything. Oliva grabs him and lands a head but on Ron's face, but he tries to launch a counterattack which breaks his own fingers. Oliva lands another head but Ron continues to attack with his broken fingers, so Oliva unleashes the final head but which defeats Ron. Kaku's son named Shunsei steps into the arena to fight against Baki, and he rushes to land a punch, but Baki easily dodges it before striking his chin. Baki lands 2 more blows on his chin before Shunsei can fall down, and the match quickly ends in Baki's victory. In the next match, Jaku tries to unleash a surprise attack after inviting Retsu to a friendly handshake, but Retsu blows him away. He invites Retsu to another handshake before attempting another sneak attack, but it fails just like the first time. He invites Retsu to another handshake for the 3rd time, but this time Retsu launches multiple attacks without letting go of his hands. Jaku counterattacks and breaks his arm using an armbar, but the audience rushes the field out of anger. Retsu tells them to go back and declares that the fight is finally fair now that he can only use one hand. He attacks Jaku and flips him around by grabbing his fingers with his toes. Jaku attacks back by blocking the nerves passing through the shin, which hurts Retsu a lot, but Retsu flips him again after taking out his beard using his toes. Jaku offers to heal Retsu's elbow and the whole audience expects him to launch another sneak attack, but he actually heals it without using another underhanded technique. Retsu unleashes a barrage of attacks on Jaku, who gets pushed to the boundary, and Jaku desperately tries to attack but Retsu blocks it. He punches Jaku away, who kneels with his back towards Retsu, which shocks him. He stops attacking and Jaku acts like Retsu has given up, so Retsu rushes to attack after seeing his disgusting behavior. Jaku quickly jumps back and hits Retsu with the back of his head, which angers him even more. Jaku immediately goes back into the kneeling position and Retsu unleashes a barrage of attacks on his back, but he stops after realizing that it's useless. He apologizes to Jaku and lightly stabs his back with his knuckle, which makes Jaku forcefully stand back up. He punches Jaku's face, which makes him collapse while holding his hand, and Retsu wins the match. In the next match, Junior cuts his opponent's face with the first strike and knocks him out with the next 2 consecutive hits, which secures his victory. The Chinese fans get sad over how the Chinese side lost 3 out of 4 matches, which means they will still lose ultimately even if they manage to win the last match. Yujiro steps out and tells them that if Kaku manages to win the last match against him, then it will be the Chinese side's win. Kaku steps out and throws a wheelchair at Yujiro, but he asks Kaku to sit on it after catching. Kaku sits on the wheelchair that he strolls around, which shocks the audience, and Yujiro asks him what he had sacrificed in his pursuit for power. Kaku explains that he only used to believe in strength, but he got beaten by an old martial artist once, which opened his eyes to the martial art logic, for which he abandoned all the power he had previously gained. He flies out of the wheelchair after saying that Yujiro's strength is now challenging his martial art logic. Yujiro attacks him, but Kaku easily dodges it, and Retsu explains that Kaku is using Shaori, which means to relax the body. Kaku asks Yujiro to take his slow punch, but Yujiro instinctively dodges it and backs away to the wall, which shocks Baki, but they all see the force behind the slow punch when it hits the wall. Kaku's punch makes Yujiro fly into the air, and Yujiro imitates his Shaori in the next move but declares that he will not use it again. He clenches his fist and punches the ground, which breaks the arena. He tells Kaku that such strength cannot be gained by relaxing the muscles, and Kaku reveals that this is the first time someone has made him feel so tense. Yujiro lands an uppercut before punching him towards the wall, but Kaku bounces back and kicks him away. Yujiro lands a strong right hook, but Kaku uses his Shaori to spin before releasing another kick, but Yujiro punches him to the ball. Retsu explains that Kaku is unable to use his Shaori due to the wall, and Yujiro kicks him to the wall again, but Kaku lands a few attacks on Yujiro too. Yujiro flexes his muscles and Kaku tells him that his muscles are different from other people, which show that he was born to fight. They both clash again and Kaku goes flying into the wall, but he lands multiple hits on Yujiro after running back to him. He continues to hit Yujiro, who does not resist for a while until he finally squashes Kaku's face, which tears his eardrums. He launches another right punch but stops at the last moment as he notices that Kaku had already passed away, and the doctor declares it a death due to old age. Yujiro leaves the arena out of frustration, and Kaku gets back up to declare that it was the win of martial arts. He tells everyone that there is no better self-defense technique than death, which he has finally mastered, and the tournament ends with no conclusive winner. They both return to the arena at night and agree to fight again after another 100 years. Baki returns to Japan and goes back to the forest to see the elder tree that he always used to train under, but Junior also appears there. Junior challenges him to a fight, but Baki rejects him and reveals that he will no longer fight anyone else except Yujiro. He leaves after saying that, but Junior decides that he will make Baki want to fight him no matter what. A few days later, he meets Koju and tells her that he wants to marry her, but he will fight against Baki first to prove that he is the #1 man. He tells her that her job is to be a woman and even gives her a kiss on the cheeks before leaving. He goes to fight Goki in the woods, and on the other side, Muhammad Ali gets interviewed about his superhuman hand speed, where he reveals that there is someone else who is even faster than him. Back at the woods, Junior refuses to harm Goki too much and defeats him using his extreme speed. Koju tells Baki about how someone wants to marry her, and Baki tells her that it's fully her decision to choose who she wants to marry. Junior goes to fight Doppo next, who quickly realizes that his reflexes are not fast enough to stop Junior's attack, so he takes the hand pocket stance. Junior's next 2 attacks fail to reach Doppo, who declares that they will fight to the death now. Junior attacks again, but Doppo blocks it before going on offense, but Junior manages to dodge it despite the short distance and even launches a counterattack. On the other side, Ali explains to the reporter how getting cleanly hit by a heavyweight makes a person feel like millions of ants are claiming up his body, and back at the park, Junior cleanly hits Doppo's chin, who falls to the ground after getting that same feeling. A few days later, Baki and Koju kiss at a park when Junior interrupts them and tells Baki that he wants to marry her. Koju laughs at him for saying that even after seeing them kiss, and Baki tells him that she doesn't belong to anyone. He says that it's like a competition where every woman can choose the man she finds best and it's up to Koju to decide who she likes more. Junior goes to Jack next and they face off in an underground location where Junior quickly lands the first hit on Jack's temple, which makes him fall on his knees. On the other side, the reporter talks to Ollie about how boxing damaged his body, so Ollie shows him that he can still move like before but for only a minute, and reveals that the one who damaged his body was his son. Back at the fight, Jack and Junior exchange multiple blows and Jack smashes him on the ground before launching multiple hits to finish him off. Junior still manages to get up and hits Jack on the chin, but he continues to smash Junior, who refuses to stay down. Junior's tongue almost falls off, but he still taunts Jack to continue, but Jack decides to leave. He meets Koju again after a few days after getting his tongue reattached, but leaves with Goki after a while, who challenges Junior to a rematch after they reach the park. Goki instantly breaks his finger and smashes his face against a tree before using the same finger to smash Junior against several other trees. He leaves after Junior finally gets knocked out, but the lover boy goes back to meet Koju after some time and she says that they're all dumb for being so stuck on who is the strongest. Their meeting gets interrupted again as Doppo appears this time and challenges Junior to a match despite him being injured. Doppo blocks his first punch using his forehead, which injures Junior's hand, and he continues to attack Junior's injured fists to exploit his weakness. Junior ties up his fists to make a glove, but Doppo injures him even more until he finally decides that there is no need to fight any longer as it's Junior's defeat. Junior almost ends up crying but still goes to meet Koju once again, and she calls him uncool for losing so much. A few days later, Ollie appears out of nowhere to fight Junior, which shocks him. Ollie reveals that he has been training for a long time to fight against Junior again, but Junior objects that he is injured right now, so Ollie taunts him by calling him a chicken. Junior loses his temper and tries to attack, but Ollie quickly beats him down. He takes Junior back to his room and reveals that he knows how Junior lost his 3 previous matches. He asks Junior to stay out of this world where everyone is trying to become the strongest, but Junior refuses to step back when people older than him are still trying. Tokugawa enters the room and invites Junior to fight against the strongest boy in the world, Baki. Ollie comments that Junior might be too much of a chicken to fight him while being injured, but Junior bows down and explains that he wants to fight Baki in his prime so he can live up to their expectations. After some time, Tokugawa learns that Baki has agreed to fight if Junior arrives in his best condition, and Ollie tells Junior about how Baki wants to fight him at his strongest too. Yujiro meets up with Ollie and they both look forward to the fight between their sons. Junior goes to meet Koju and reveals that he despises Baki because he has both Koju and the title of the strongest, both of the things he wants. On the other side, Iguri tells Tokugawa that Junior will win, while Doppo and Goki discuss the upcoming match and they both agree that Junior will win too. A few days later, the day of the match finally arrives and Junior heads to the venue where he warms up while wondering what he is doing. He finally steps into the arena where Yujiro appears out of nowhere and tells him that he is about to fight a person that is aiming for him. Baki tells Yujiro to leave the arena and Yujiro tells them to fight to the death so the winner can come for him next. The fight begins as Yujiro smashes the drum and Junior tries to attack, but Baki easily makes him fall to ground after counterattacking. He brags about how he is finally ready, but Baki knocks him down again after kicking his family jewels and puts him in a headlock. Ollie punches Baki away, who thanks Ollie for interfering because he would have killed Junior otherwise, and says that Junior was not ready to die, that's why he lost. Baki turns to Yujiro and challenges him to a fight, which makes them recall the first time Baki lost after challenging him. Yujiro mentions how Baki has grown a lot and is finally a worthy opponent, so Tokugawa should set up a match as soon as possible. All the fighters soon learn that Yujiro called Baki a worthy opponent, which makes them curious about how strong Baki is now. They all go to watch him as he finally manages to visualize Yujiro, who also senses it despite being across the world in Africa. After some time, Yanagi escapes from prison and Sonoda learns from an officer that survived his escape about how he killed many guards in a flash before suddenly disappearing. Sonoda reports this to the Superintendent General, who tells him to check up on the other death row inmates. Sonoda first goes to the Belan Temple to check up on Dorian, who turned into a child after facing Retsu, and he sees that Dorian is training his lower body despite having the mind of a small child. He goes to check up on Doyle next, who went blind before, and learns that he intentionally ruptured his own eardrums but can still catch bats in darkness without his sight and hearing. Sonoda wonders what's going on and goes to check up on Sikorsky, where he learns that he is still training his grip despite being in prison. He goes to the medical facility that Speck was sent to after rapidly aging and learns that he is doing imaginary swimming inside a very viscous liquid despite always being bedridden. Sonoda and the Superintendent General discuss how all the death row inmates might be experiencing synchronicity just like the time they came to Japan, which shows that they might be up to something, and Sonoda gets ordered to keep a close eye on all of them. A park ranger named Saman tells the reporters in a press conference that he deployed weapons to get rid of a prehistoric elephant which was bound to kill all the animals and humans in the African park, but the elephant destroyed all of their weapons. He then drops a bombshell on their head that Yujiro Hanma appeared on the site and killed the animal with his bare hands. Nobody believes him, but later Saman's kid tells him that he believes him. Saman then recalls how Yujiro beat the elephant into a pulp and later grilled him and ate him. A group of elementary school kids bully a wuss named Rumina and dare him to challenge Baki, who is the strongest known high school kid. Rumina goes to his school where Baki's schoolmates tell him to wait at the river after school. He waits for him and soon Baki appears. He takes him seriously and slaps his butt so hard that he is sent flying into the water. Later he tells Rumina that they are buddies now, and Captain Stridham suddenly appears. He tells Baki about Yujiro's accomplishment and lets him know that Yujiro has accepted his challenge to fight him, but Baki tells him not to meddle in their petty family affairs. He goes away and Baki tells Rumina that he is going to fight someone random just to challenge someone. He starts shadow boxing and Rumina realizes that Baki is actually shadow boxing the heavyweight champion Michael. Baki even gets bruises and a nose bleeding, but soon he knocks out Michael by kicking him. He tells Rumina's bullies about the art of shadow boxing and he then heads home. At his home, Baki stretches his muscles and Rumina asks him who he intends to fight against. Baki then takes him to the basement where he shows him a praying mantis kept on his table, and he explains that his opponent is the mantis. He explains that insects are even more powerful than predatory animals based on their carrying and jumping powers, and that he will take the mantis on instead of Yujiro. Baki then begins shadow boxing a gigantic version of Mantis, and he kicks and lunges at him like the Mantis is a real figure rather than a figure in his imagination. He keeps attacking him, but the Mantis reflexes are quicker, due to which it throws Baki against the wall many times and even against the roof. Baki then lands a kick on its neck, but the Mantis strikes back at him, which makes Baki realize that Mantis doesn't have a brain in his head. Baki then jumps at its back to try to break its neck, but due to the wide eyes of the Mantis, it grabs Baki and hurls him in the front. At one point, Baki even gets thrown against the actual real insect, but he keeps up his imaginary fight and Rumina thinks that he is going too far, but Baki doesn't even listen to him. Baki attacks him once again and feels a soft spot under its neck which he thinks might be the weak point of the mantis. Soon he adopts the stance of martial art known as Toroken, in which he fights like a real mantis. Many years ago, a monk discovered a mantis beating up a sparrow and he started learning how mantis fights with others, due to which the art of Toroken was born. Baki uses Toroken's tactics to fight the mantis and soon he dominates the fight. The mantis then disappears and Baki wins the match. Captain Stridham visits the villa where Yujiro is taking a vacation and he discovers him actually swimming leisurely in a pool where the water is flowing at a speed of 20 km per hour. Later Stridham tells him about how Baki beat a 100-kilo mantis and Yujiro laughs when he hears this because he doesn't believe in Baki's accomplishments. Meanwhile, America's President George Bush goes out at the spot where Kennedy was murdered and an Asian man kidnaps him on the spot. Baki then tells George Bush that he wants to be sent to Arizona prison, and later, due to his crimes of abducting the president, he gets sent to Arizona prison, which is also known as the Black Pentagon. He gets stripped and his medical examination is taken. After passing through layers of security, the warden tells him that Oliva has been waiting for him and he takes him to the maximum security wing where only the most dangerous prisoners are kept. They both then enter a luxurious area where the warden leaves Baki alone, and Baki then meets with Oliva there, who is living the life of a king. Oliva understands that Baki wants to fight him to become stronger, but he tells him to become the number 2 in prison first before fighting him. Baki is then taken to his cell where the others advise him to not wake the second most powerful fighter up, who is also their roommate. Baki goes to sleep and the next day he meets the second powerful player. He then challenges him to a fight right off the bat. All the prisoners get lined up and are told not to chit-chat, but surprisingly the second most powerful fighter named Jun leisurely walks anywhere he wants and smokes the guard cigarettes. He gets an omelette for breakfast too, which no one gets, and during breakfast, a sumo wrestler who has never been defeated before challenges him. Jun gives him a gun to shoot him, and just when the wrestler is about to press the button, Jun kicks his balls. Jun then takes him to a separate area where they both decide to fight with sumo wrestling, but the wrestler fails to throw off Jun's body. In return, Jun slaps him so hard that he bursts his eardrum, and he uses his hair strands to tear off the wrestler's cochlea, due to which he collapses on the ground. He keeps losing his balance, due to which Jun wins, and after he leaves, the guard shoots the wrestler. Later Baki challenges Jun again, but the police officers put him in solitary confinement for being so cocky. His roommate brings him food and tells him how June came into prison. In the past, June was a pirate belonging to an island that was ruled by America. He saw so much slavery and inequality that he trained an army of his own which did not need any weapons, but the people of his island only half believed him due to his age. One day, one of his men hijacked a meeting of George Bosch and held him hostage. June then live-streamed from George's home and demanded independence of his island, after which George had no choice but to give June's island their demanded freedom. Baki's roommate tells him that June has now come to prison to take on Oliva and to beat him. He also tells him that Oliva, Yujiro and June are always being watched by the military satellites to keep a watch on them because the governments are afraid of weaponless people like them. A guard comes and beats the old man up for chit-chatting with the prisoner. Baki then kicks him and he ends up tripping over the railing, but Baki rushes at him and saves him. June comes at the spot and tells him to let go of the American, but still Baki saves him and the guard decides to let go of the whole event. After 3 days, Baki joins the normal prison routine in which he helps in the construction of the road faster than any other prisoner. He discusses with Michael, who used to be the previous heavyweight champion, about how he is being released in 3 months. Meanwhile, the warden gets a huge donation with a request that Michael shouldn't be released in such a condition that he can box in the outside world. Warden tells his officer to call the trio officers known as Mouth, and when they arrive, he tells them to deal with Michael. The trio explains to the officer how they can coordinate their speaking to their speaking and how they are a one unit rather than 3 different people. The officer then takes them and they tell him that Michael will be a piece of cake for them. They face Michael in a prison yard and tell him that they can beat him easily since their coordination is peckless. They then start pecking Michael as if he were a worm, and he is unable to defend himself against their moves, which come from left and right swiftly. One of the officers runs away, so Michael follows him and they all then kick his face. Michael runs away to a corner and the 3 brothers then face him with a boxing stance. They launch simultaneous attacks which Michael fails to defend against, and he eventually falls down to his knees. One officer holds him in a lock while the other 2 brutally stomp on him until he finally gets knocked out. They take out a knife to cut his tendon so he can never make a fist again, but a fan comes flying towards them before getting stuck in the wall, which makes them stop. June comes out rolling from the dark to take them on, and they surround him in a triangle formation. They try to attack, but he starts peeing on them and makes a circle on the ground before laying down in it. They start stomping him, but he easily gets back up after they are done and tells them to continue again. They get back into the triangle formation with one of them on top of the wall, but he easily knocks one out with a single punch, which ruins their formation. The second officer pees himself out of fear before running away, and the third one comes down the fall without resisting. Michael thanks June for helping him out and they return to the cell where Baki requests June to fight him. Oliva suddenly enters the room after breaking the door and reveals that he and June both have a fatal weakness, which is that they always want to win. They both reveal the reason they fight, which angers Baki as he mocks them for needing a reason to fight, so they send him flying with a combo hit. Oliva takes out a handkerchief of his lover whom he is obsessed with, but June spits out on it and Oliva rushes out to clean it. June learns from his cellmates that Oliva's lover lives with him lavishly in the prison, but no one has ever seen her and they have always only heard about her from Oliva. June deduces that she must be an imaginary lover that he has created to boost his image of being the most free man on earth, and the cellmate explains that they all feel like it but never mentioned a word because Oliva might kill everyone in the prison if he ever hears it. June assures him that he will bring Oliva back to reality soon and hands his cellmate a jar, asking him to return it the next day. Meanwhile, Oliva gets dressed to meet his lover, who takes out her anger on him before saying "I love you" to him, which gives him extreme stimulation. The next day, June reveals that the jar holds courage that was gathered by a weak kid who gave it to him, and soon, all the people gather in the courtyard to watch the fight between him and Oliva, who soon steps out while carrying a bed. He reveals his so-called beautiful lover named Maria, who turns out to be extremely fat, which leaves all the inmates shocked. June proposes a fight where the one who lets go of the handkerchief first is the loser, and Oliva agrees to it. June kicks it off by hitting Oliva multiple times, which makes him fall back, but the handkerchief almost slips out of June's hand, so he uses the second one too. Oliva mocks him by pinching the handkerchief with his pinky finger, and June returns to using one hand, but he plucks his beard, which he throws toward Oliva's eye. Oliva gets blinded for a bit and June uses the chance to throw him into the hair, which makes Oliva change his grip again, so Maria calls him uncool for doing so, which shocks him. June starts hitting Oliva while holding the handkerchief with his pinky, but Oliva reveals that he is not even holding the handkerchief. June also stops holding it and they start punching each other while keeping the handkerchief on their palms, and June does not let it slip away even as he gets smashed on the ground. They keep their hands vertical to make sure it does not get blown away by the wind, but Baki suddenly sleeps with Maria, which shocks Oliva, who lets the handkerchief fly away. Maria allows Baki to sleep and explains that they are very unmanly for boringly fighting while talking so much about a handkerchief. June lands multiple all-out hits on Oliva, who does not resist, and he twirls his hair around Oliva's eardrum to pull it out. Oliva decides that he will show Maria his manly side and he punches June away, sending him flying to the wall. Oliva realizes that Baki intentionally performed such a stunt to awaken him, and June gets back up, which shocks everyone. He kicks Oliva to the ground, but Oliva jumps back up, quickly slamming June to the ground. On the other side, George Bosch takes Yujiro to meet June's student, where he asks the student to protect him against an attack from Yujiro as per their deal about how he will protect Bosch. The student reveals that it's just suicide, which was not part of the deal, but he tries to still keep it by kicking Bosch out of the building to prevent Yujiro from being able to reach him. He turns around to face Yujiro but realizes that Yujiro has already reached Bosch, and Yujiro tells him that he wants to fight his master, June. June recalls the poor people from his land and their freedom, due to which he gets up again to everyone's shock. Oliva also flexes his muscles again and builds up stamina in his fist. He declares that this will be the finale, and June approaches him while assessing his muscular body. June comments that the ground supports all the martial artists and that he will show him true art by uprooting him from the ground. He attacks him and hurls him up in the air. Oliva is put down and Baki steps forward to congratulate him. Bosch also congratulates him, and Yujiro declares him as the strongest man, which makes June think that he must be out of his mind. In reality, Oliva smacks down June in the ground and tells the other prisoners to carefully carry him away. He tells Baki that his love for his muscles made him win, and that if he lets his muscles loose, they will spread throughout the prison and reach heaven. He explains that he eats more than 10,000 calories and keeps his body lean because he is holding all of his muscles in. He then picks Baki up as if he is a little kid, and after placing him back, he slaps him so hard that he gets sent flying. Baki thinks he is ready to fight now, but Oliva simply declares that he has built so much muscle to carry his love Maria. He then picks Maria up and carries her inside the prison. The next day, June is gone from his prison cell, and the authorities discover a letter from June addressing Oliva and Maria. The letter contains a money note from June's country, and the officers discover a dug hole under one of the bunkers through which June ran away. Olive realizes that June has invited him to his country, and meanwhile June returns to his country where he rejoins his friends. Soon Baki attempts to escape the prison and he gets stopped by the prison warden. He tells the warden that he thinks he can become the Unchained too. The officers surround him and Baki comments that he thinks he can easily escape them. They come even close to him with guns, and the warden makes fun of his cocky attitude. Suddenly the warden's glasses break and Baki shows him the buttons of all the officers. He explains that they all became his hostage the moment they surrounded him, and that he can instantly take them out without their notice. Baki then forces the warden to escort him out, and since the guards believe the warden is taking him out on a walk, they open all gates for the warden. Baki comes out and he then asks the officers to put back the cuffs on him so that he can go back. The warden thinks he is insulting them, and Oliva suddenly arrives. Baki challenges him as the new unchained prisoner and even scolds him for treating him like a kid. Oliva doesn't get affected by his taunts, and Baki then calls him a slave to his passion for freedom, which really pisses him off. Baki goes back while Oliva throws his motorbike away in anger. Later, Oliva gets ready like a little boy and goes to the Fatso Queen Maria. They both play rock paper scissors, where Oliva wins each time, but he announces that he has lost. Maria goes to sleep and Oliva then joins her. The next day he visits Baki, who has been put in solitary confinement, and he reminds him that he is the king of the prison while Baki is just confined like a slave. He proceeds to piss on him and Baki laughs at him for feeling the need to boast off his status. Baki makes a bet that Oliva will soon be begging him to fight him, and he keeps laughing at him. Later Oliva doesn't even enjoy the very expensive wine brought to him by the prison cooks, while Baki enjoys the cheap alcohol that his roommate brings for him in solitary confinement. Oliva tells the warden that he should hold a sports tournament inside the prison and invite the president too. He proposes to sell the broadcasting rights to earn money through the channel and let the world watch his match with Baki, so the warden instantly agrees. Oliva recalls how Maria used to be a slim beauty, but everything changed after she started taking medication for some sickness. He then tells Baki about the tournament, but Baki doesn't seem to care since he thinks he can fight Oliva anytime he wants. He kicks Oliva a few times, which angers him, and he accepts his challenge to fight him at this moment. He slaps Baki hard, sending him through the wall to the other room, and Baki then gets out of his thumb's cuffs by dislocating his shoulders and pushing his arteries together, which decrease the blood flow into his thumbs. He attacks Oliva, who blocks his attack and pulls him through the wall to his side. He then grabs him and starts flinging him around as if he is his towel. After flinging him around, he throws him in the air and flings him to the other room through another wall. Oliva then flings him through 3 other rooms by breaking their walls, and then he throws Baki against a steel door which breaks open and Baki is sent flying 3 stories down. He grabs Baki by his ankle, after which Baki starts kicking him and he flings him at the ground powerfully. Baki suddenly has an awakening in which he grows his back muscles and he jumps up to face Oliva. Suddenly he lunges at him within a second and strikes him down, due to which Oliva lands on the ground face down. Nobody can see his speed, but later Warden sees his action through the recording of the camera. Oliva gets up and the fight resumes. He turns into a sphere mass of muscles which shock everyone, and one of the guards recalls that Oliva once showed them a technique in which he could move around his muscles from his bicep to his shoulders to the other arm. Bite kicks him, but he gets repelled by the sphere, and Baki recalls that Kureha used a similar tactic in the underground tournament. He uses Gutaijutsu technique, which is used to break spherical balls, but it doesn't work on Oliva. Instead, Baki gets sucked in the spherical muscular ball instead. He then gets spat out and Oliva tells Baki that he has lost, but he should verbally admit this. Baki doesn't agree with him and Oliva tries to suck him in again, but this time Baki punches his face, which stops him. Baki then challenges him to beat each other up, but Michael yells at him from a distance and warns him not to do it. Baki still takes him on and he and Oliva both keep punching each other's faces. Baki slowly starts to push him back as they keep punching each other, and finally he pushes him past the prison wall with his punch. Oliva collapses on the ground and Baki wins the match. Suddenly Maria walks towards the scene and asks Oliva to carry her back, so he gets back up and carries her back to her room. Later Oliva announces to all the prisoners that Baki has beat him and that he can't let him be the strongest person in the prison, so he should be discharged. Baki gets discharged from prison and Stridum tells Yujiro about Baki's latest accomplishment. At an underground plant in Colorado, the workers discover something horrific. A few days later, Captain Stridum goes to Baki and asks him about the strongest creature in history, before revealing that they discovered a human who got frozen during the Jurassic era that was preying upon a T-Rex, the so-called strongest creature in history. On the other side, scientists try to revive the human named Pickle and 90 days pass by, but Pickle still does not wake up. One of the scientists suddenly decides to make a steak out of the preserved T-Rex, and the smell wakes up Pickle, who follows the scent to reach the scientist. He eats the steak and the scared doctor tries to shoot him, but the bullets fail to penetrate much and Pickle throws back the bullets so fast they enter the wall. Pickle shakes the scientist, who tries to escape, thinking that Pickle is trying to eat him, but Pickle notices the scent of the T-Rex, so he goes to the chamber where it's stored. The scientist locks him inside before calling the police, but Pickle breaks out of the facility and starts wreaking havoc. The army gets deployed, but the lead scientist requests them not to harm Pickle because he is very valuable, and the army agrees to his request. They reveal a new weapon, but Pickle easily beats it and the US Army gets called. The US Army arrives and Stridum then easily tames Pickle, who does not feel any hate coming from Stridum. He brings Pickle to the US Army base in Japan, and at the airport, Pickle sees a woman for the first time in millions of years, which makes him clap her on live TV. He instantly goes to sleep after this act, and the lead scientist explains that he was fighting the T-Rex when the meteor hit, which is why they were frozen instantly. Protesters soon gather outside the US base asking for Pickle to be punished for his crime, and Yujiro appears at the front gate. Pickle gets placed in a customized building, while outside, Retsu tries to sneak in to meet the T-Rex hunter. Yujiro barges in through the front gate and the officers start beating themselves to avoid getting killed by him. Retsu manages to reach the building but meets Shinogi, who also came to meet Pickle. They discuss how Pickle looks very strong, and Doppo, Jack, Goki, Orochi and Jaku also appear for the same reason. They all reveal that they want to fight Pickle, and they notice how he is peacefully sleeping despite the commotion. Jack wakes him up and Yujiro also appears, mocking Orochi for trying to act tough, so Orochi tries to attack him. Yujiro tells him to stay in the corner and walks right through the bulletproof glass to face off against Pickle. He puts his fist forward and Pickle instinctively touches fist, which makes him recall the same feeling he felt from the T-Rex. He pushes his fist and Yujiro flips him to the ground, but also gets pushed back himself while doing so. They all get mesmerized by Pickle's prehistoric muscles as he gets back up, but the army suddenly interrupts them outside. The soldier politely requests Yujiro not to harm Pickle, who is a living world heritage, so Yujiro tells him to let everyone inside go who just came to satisfy their curiosity. They all get taken out of base, while Gaia, who was still hiding in the cell, also leaves as he realizes that Yujiro knew he was hiding. Baki tells Rumina that he is not interested in Pickle. Rather, he only wants to beat up his dad, and Rumina points out that he looks really happy whenever he is talking about his dad. Later Baki visits Retsu and requests him to teach Kung Fu, but he tells him that he is not interested in him. He explains that he is only interested in Pickle right now and is burning with passion to fight him. Soon Tokugawa, Stridum and some fighters gather in the underground arena to watch Pickle, who has not eaten any food in a month since he can only eat food that he will kill himself. All animals flee on seeing him, and finally an endangered Siberian tiger approaches him, so Pickle kills and eats him. Some scientists approve this since they think Pickle is more important than an endangered species, but a lot of protests are carried out against this. Retsu proposes to Tokugawa that he wants to offer himself as a sacrifice to Pickle, and he argues that he won't let himself be eaten. Somehow Tokugawa agrees, and he and Stridum convince Professor Pain, who is overseeing Pickle. Retsu then approaches Pickle, who immediately jumps up on his guard, and they both attack each other. Retsu manages to land him on his butt and kick him in the face, due to which Pickle starts crying. Pickle then punches him so hard that he loses balance and then takes a bite from his shoulder. He bites him again and Retsu is defeated as Pickle fully dominates him. Retsu loses all reasoning and starts punching him like a kid, which makes Pickle confused. Retsu then faces a spiritual awakening and he suddenly lunges at Pickle. He kicks and punches him precisely, due to which Pickle falls on the ground. Professor Pain comments that Pickle's x-rays show his neck bones are thick like a quadruped animal, and just then Pickle jumps back to his feet. He then assumes the stance of an animal in offense form similar to a cheetah, so Retsu braces himself to use his most powerful punch on him. Pickle then lunges at him and crashes against him so fast that Retsu is unable to respond on time. Retsu is sent flying back and he passes out on the spot, which makes Pickle the winner. Pickle then approaches Retsu's body and Tokugawa runs towards him to stop him from eating Retsu's body. He kicks Tokugawa away and starts eating Retsu as he keeps crying as well. Soon Professor Pain injects him with something, due to which he passes out. Retsu later wakes up in hospital without one leg and with a half-bitten shoulder, and he feels ashamed that he couldn't fulfill his promise to Pickle. Baki meets with him and they both discuss his situation. Baki then compliments his resilient spirit and his unwavering morals. Doppo then learns about Retsu's fate and he shares the news with Orochi as well. They both feel angry since they believe Pickle doesn't even care about their existence and deems them unworthy enough to eat them. The news spreads in the martial arts world, and soon Pickle also escapes his cell despite being heavily sedated. He steals clothes from a fighter and blends in with the hordes of people in the city. He finds everything really weird and flashy, but nobody tries attacking him, so he keeps on walking. Soon he walks on a road, due to which a truck rams into him and he gets sent flying. He attacks the truck and lifts it up to throw it away. He then discovers that the truck was actually transporting meat, so he starts binge eating the meat. Orochi thinks about how his father Orochi made him the chairman of Shinshinkai Dojo on a whim, and he feels like he should battle Pickle just to prove his strength to everyone. He gathers his pupils and tells them to find Pickle at any cost so that they can take revenge for Retsu. Meanwhile, Pickle comes across an entertainment district restaurant and a Shinshinkai member tells its manager to let him deal with Pickle instead. Doppo tells Orochi that he can never defeat Pickle, so he decides to fight his dad to prove him wrong. A group of Shinshinkai fighters gather to take Pickle away, but just then Hanayama arrives. Orochi knocks out his father while Hanayama's friend tells the Shinshinkai group to get lost, and both Hanayama and Pickle struggle to retrieve a knife. Pickle then kicks Hanayama away and starts walking away, but Hanayama stops him with his bulldozer strength. Just then, Baki arrives and starts admiring the body of Pickle. Pickle bumps fist with him, which manages to topple Baki, and Baki then kicks his face in excitement even though he didn't mean to. Pickle then tells him to follow him, and when Orochi arrives, he discovers that everybody has left. He still requests his pupils to help him out, and meanwhile Pickle arrives at the underground venue with Baki. He attacks Baki out of nowhere and sends him flying in the air. He then starts dancing to celebrate his victory. Orochi trains on his own, and afterwards he tells Retsu that he wants to fight Pickle due to his selfish reasons and not for his revenge's sake. Retsu offers to teach him Chinese Kung Fu, but instead Orochi agrees to let him teach him Japanese Kung Fu instead. Tokugawa tells Yujiro about Baki's defeat and he calls him a wuss for fighting so pathetically. Baki thinks about how Yujiro will call him a wuss and he wonders how he can really defeat Pickle. Meanwhile, Retsu tells Orochi that one of his punches he made against Hanayama once upon a time really surprised him, and he advises him to improve that punch. Professor Pain dumps barrels of chloroform on Pickle to knock him out, and Tokugawa tells him that Pickle won't leave this place now since he knows he can play around with people who come here. Pickle wakes up and Tokugawa tells him to wait for a little bit, so he goes back to sleep. Orochi and Retsu discuss how an air jet can achieve the speed of Mach, and Orochi shows Retsu a whip that can achieve the same speed if he uses it right. Orochi then demonstrates how he can twist his body and ankles to achieve the Mach speed and use his ultimate move that can work against Pickle. Retsu recalls a tale from China in which a Japanese man Doppo adopted a boy from the circus after getting impressed by his skills. Orochi and he discuss how they can improve his move, and suddenly Kaku appears between them. He shows Orochi a technique in which he breaks an eggshell from the bottom by punching it, and he advises him to practice the same move, which will improve his skill too. Later Orochi focuses on the animal instinct to survive, and he masters his move by imagining that his fingers have tiny joints. Kaku tells Doppo that Orochi will easily master the move he taught him, and at the Shinshinkai dojo, Orochi finally masters his new move, which makes all the glass around him burst. Stridum meets Baki, and Baki then prepares to shadow fight against a T-Rex. Orochi requests Tokugawa to let him become Pickle's meal, and soon he arrives at the baseball stadium to face him. He meets his mother and also his birth mother who gave birth to him. Many years ago, his birth father died in a circus accident, and Doppo, who was impressed by his talents, adopted him from his birth mother to raise him. Doppo feels lucky to have two mothers, and as he enters the arena, he gets greeted by 55,000 of his Shinshinkai students who practice the basic martial arts together. He then prepares to face Pickle, and just then Pickle lunges at him through a door. Orochi hits 5 of his vital points, but Pickle still rushes at him, and Orochi then kicks his jaw. Pickle kicks him, which sends him flying, and he adopts the stance of a predator. Orochi then approaches him and uses his special move on him, which he had been training. Pickle falls down on his knees and compares the move to the swing of T-Rex's tail itself. Orochi's fist also breaks, but Pickle gets up, and this time Orochi kicks him hard. He breaks his foot due to his strong move, but soon Pickle recovers from his attacks. He assumes his predatory stance once again, and Orochi also gets up to use his most powerful move on him. Pickle lunges at him, and Orochi unleashes his strongest move yet, which sends Pickle flying to the ground. His muscles break to reveal the bone of his arms, but still he believes he has succeeded, and the whole audience cheers for him. Suddenly Pickle turns around in his sleep, and Orochi realizes that he has been defeated, as Pickle was just sleeping. He starts crying, and Pickle also wakes up while crying. Pickle gets ready to feast on him, and he immediately tears off his arm. Orochi collapses on the ground, and Tokugawa tells the snipers to take down Pickle, but suddenly Doppo comes to stop him. He reminds him that Orochi made a promise to be eaten man to man, so he should back down, and just then, Pickle clasps his hands together in the form of a prayer in front of Orochi's hand. He then leaves without eating anything, and Orochi gets taken away in a stretcher. All his pupils bow in respect, and later Retsu feeds him Chinese tea in the hospital. Retsu feels envious of him due to his great fighting skills, but Baki arrives and tells him that he failed in his fight. Baki then announces to assume fighting from where he left off in his place. Yujiro walks casually through the town, and he comes across Doppo, who invites him to a bar. Doppo tells him that his words changed Orochi, but they both admit that Orochi used to be a spoiled brat. Doppo then admits that he was too sentimental over his kid, due to which his own growth as a martial artist stopped. They both also admit that Pickle was sent by God in this specific era to determine the world's strongest man ever born. Baki tries to shadow practice with Pickle, but he cannot picture him at all despite having fought with him before. Retsu joins him, and Baki starts having a psychotic meltdown as he gets excited about fighting Pickle again, who is extremely strong. Baki then decides to visit Pickle without consulting Tokugawa, and meanwhile Jack Hanma approaches Pickle to fight him. Jack bares his teeth to Pickle since he wants to have a battle of teeth with him, and he lunges at him with his mouth open. Both fighters lock mouth with each other, and just then Baki calls Tokugawa asking him to let him fight Pickle the next day. He informs Baki about Jack's fight when suddenly Pickle picks Jack up with his mouth and throws him away. He then chews Jack's mouth that he tore off from his face and approaches him again. Jack throws a punch under his face which sends Pickle flying, but Pickle regains his balance and assumes his predatory stance. Just when Baki and Retsu rush at the arena, Pickle lunges at Jack, and Jack somehow sends him flying 2 meters into the air. Pickle gets thrown against the audience seats, and Jack then smashes his head against the seats. He throws him to the ground and bites off his ear like an animal. Pickle realizes something sinister has happened to him, and he becomes furious. Up next, when Jack tries attacking him, he misses him twice, and he wonders what kind of move Pickle is doing. He suddenly realizes that Pickle is actually dodging his attacks and jumping against the wall behind to bounce back, however he was unable to trace his movements. He attacks Pickle, but this time Pickle obliterates him by punching him around like a toy. He knocks out Jack and begins to dance in joy. He then starts to cry as he approaches Jack to eat him, and Baki runs towards him to stop him. Just then, Pickle stops by himself and he retreats back. He recalls how he ate a bee in his childhood, due to which he had to suffer a lot. Tokugawa approaches Jack, and when he touches him, Jack thrusts his fingers forward, which Tokugawa narrowly avoids. Due to Pickle's strong intuition, he managed to avoid being killed by Jack even in his unconscious state. Kureha treats Jack and informs Tokugawa that he will survive. Tokugawa asks him how Jack managed to thrust his fingers together despite being passed out, and Kureha tells them about a World War story in which a captain of a captured force asked the other army to spare his men if he managed to run away with his cut after they would behead him. He actually managed to do this task, and in the present, Jack also managed to do it in the same way. The nurse informs everyone that Jack has run away, and just then, Jack reaches the underground arena to face Pickle again. He kicks Pickle again and again, due to which Pickle runs away from him in fear, but suddenly he turns around to face him. He then grabs him and hurls him on his head so fast that Jack gets knocked out again. Jack wakes up in the hospital and he runs out to face Pickle again, but Baki stops him. He then tells him that after knocking him out, Pickle tied him to a pole to preserve him so that he could eat him later, and Jack cried out in anger on hearing this. Baki then approaches Pickle to fight him next, and he keeps waiting for him. Tokugawa tells Yujiro about the latest update, and he decides that he will eat whoever is left standing. Professor Payne decides to feed Pickle T-Rex meat, which was preserved with him, and Pickle then offers the raw meat to Baki as well. They both enjoy the meat together, and Payne tells Tokugawa that Pickle may never fight anyone ever again. Just then, Baki approaches Pickle and lightly taps his cheek, which makes him furious. He tackles Baki and drags him against the wall. Baki kicks him hard and Pickle grabs him tightly. He jumps in the air with Baki and they both fall head down. Finally, both of them collapse on the ground, but surprisingly they are both standing. Pickle flicks the still Baki, whose internal organs are in shock due to the fall and his lungs restricted, preventing him from breathing, but he refuses to back down as he swallows back the blood that comes in his mouth. Pickle starts to feel guilty that he ruined his precious toy, so he gets on his knees to pray, which angers Baki, and he slaps away Pickle's hand. Pickle starts hitting him like a child playing with a fragile toy, but this hurts Baki's pride, so he jumps down again after climbing up. Pickle gets confused as this was the first time he saw someone pretending just to fight more, and Baki quickly launches a few attacks which don't appear to hit Pickle, but he still falls on the ground. He gets back up and tries to walk but falls on his face once more. Retsu explains that Baki lightly grazed him to shake his brain at an extremely fast speed, but Pickle gets even more shocked because he felt like the ground came to his face. He starts seeing Baki as an earth-moving sorcerer, but Baki quickly hits with a whip strike which leaves a mark on Pickle's back. The pain of getting his skin targeted becomes a first for Pickle and starts being defensive as he tries to use the same move he used to defeat Retsu. Baki suddenly starts performing kung fu that integrates the strengths of animals, and he quickly changes forms, ranging from a tiger to all the strong prehistoric animals. Pickle gets shocked as he feels his strongest foes all from the same man who can move earth, and he starts backing away. Baki quickly attacks using the T-Rex's claws and he flips Pickle to the ground. Baki does not let him rest and quickly launches an attack using the Triceratops move, but Pickle quickly jumps back to launch himself with full force. Baki stops at the last moment and Pickle collides with him at full force, but he himself ends up flying away towards the benches. All the spectators get shocked and realize that the force of Pickle's attack was so strong that even a small movement was able to deflect him. Baki starts peeing in different corners of the arena to mark his territory, which angers Pickle, so he jumps back into the arena. Baki steps forward to clash with him head-on using strength instead of any martial arts, and Pickle quickly smashes him into the ground. He continues to stomp Baki, who barely gets back up, but Pickle punches him away as he wonders how he should win against Pickle. He recalls how he always followed Yujiro's footsteps and he starts dodging Pickle's attacks. Pickle continues to attack, but Baki's speed increases so much that it looks like Pickle's attacks are passing right through him. Baki finds the perfect moment and lands an uppercut on Pickle's family jewels. He rolls around, feeling excruciating pain, but soon gets back up, full of anger. They all notice huge scars on Pickle's body that ran from the front till the back, and they realize that they came from the apex predator, a T-Rex. The spectators instinctively start clapping after seeing them, and Pickle begins to shift his joints to achieve his final battle form. Baki sees this as a sign of respect and takes his first blow head-on. He meets Pickle's next attack with equal force, which allows him to stay in the same place and counterattacks the next one to prove that humanity might have devolved physically, but their technique has only improved. He feels the aura of all the strong predators coming from Pickle, who starts crying, and they initiate a close quarter fight where Baki continues to subjugate him, so he starts moving backwards. He gets cornered against the wall, so he tries to escape, but Baki catches up to him and kicks him away. He decides to give up on a fight of technique and chooses a fight of stamina, so he goes fist forward to Pickle. A slugfest occurs and soon the difference in stamina appears as Baki starts losing and Pickle uses a technique for the first time due to extreme fear of losing. Baki collapses and Pickle sits at the side while crying. Hanayama expresses that it's Pickle's defeat because Baki forced him to use a technique which was created for the weak to stand against the strong, but Retsu does not agree. Pickle leaves the arena and Baki soon follows him to the rooftop where they watch the city together. On the other side, the president asks Yujiro to show him if he really can create diamond from coal just from the pressure from his fist, so Yujiro proves it. A worldwide voting is held to decide what should be done with Pickle, and the majority votes to return him to the state he was found in. Pickle appears before Stridum to give him a head of AT-Rex for letting him fight so much, and he disappears in Tokyo afterwards. A few days later, Baki gets tested just in case for any internal injuries, and the doctors get shocked when they see how his brain looks like a demon's face. A few more days go by and Koju recalls how she held Junior the whole time he was crying after losing to Baki. She goes out and meets Baki as they both walk to school happily. After school, some thugs try to steal money from Baki, but Kuriyagawa, an old friend of Baki's mother, tells them to leave. The two sit down to talk, where Kuriyagawa mentions how the final fight between Yujiro and Baki is coming up soon. He mentions how it's time for Baki to take revenge for his mother, and he recalls how she was married to a wealthy man before but gave it all up when she met Yujiro. He explains that she only wanted Yujiro's love, which she could have only attained if she gave Yujiro what he wanted, a son that can beat him. That is why she trained Baki to be an elite fighter from the start. He asks Baki about how she looked at her last moments, and Baki recalls the look of satisfaction on her face, which meant that she finally got what she wanted all along, so Kuriyagawa states that Baki also wanted her love but never got it. He asks Baki to stop chasing after her, but Baki mentions how she tried to fight Yujiro despite knowing that it would lead to death just to save him. Kuriyagawa apologizes to Baki for thinking that he was just doing everything for vengeance, and Baki realizes that he was only doing everything to repay the kindness his mother gave him at the end. On the other side, Yujiro goes to face off against Oliva, who loses in a battle of technique, so they decide to test their strength and Yujiro gains the upper hand once again. Back in Japan, the new prime minister goes to meet Tokugawa, who gives him a large amount of money to gain his approval for the fight between Yujiro and Baki. The prime minister, unaware of the weight of this battle, goes back to ask his colleagues about who Yujiro is, so they explain it by revealing how Yujiro was easily able to beat up a previous prime minister after forcefully entering the official residence through the front gate. The prime minister questions why they cannot just kill him, so his colleagues reveal that even the US has entered a friendly relationship with Yujiro because he is the most dangerous weapon of mankind. On another side, Stridum trains his juniors before heading off to battle against his good friend Yujiro, who easily defeats him with a single strike just like the last few times. Meanwhile, Baki tries to image train against Yujiro but gets badly beaten up, while on the other side, Yujiro goes to meet Tokugawa, where he asks him to get checked up. Tokugawa gets shocked that the Great Ogre is caring for his health, but he falls down while puking blood after a few minutes. Yujiro realizes that he has gained the ability to see anyone's weakness with more accuracy than any modern medical equipment. Tokugawa wakes up in a hospital after a while, where he gets told to rest, and at another place, Retsu refuses to spar against an unbeaten boxing champion who asks to spar him after seeing the damage he did to a punching bag. He tells them that it will be too dangerous for the boxing champion, but they don't listen, so he knocks him in a single attack. Baki goes to meet Orochi, who practices with a plastic bag, and he remarks that he has no idea why he is still trying to fight Yujiro even though he no longer hates him, so Orochi tells him that he is just fighting because they are father and son. Baki learns that Retsu is entering the boxing world to see how far he can go with just kung fu, and Retsu, on the other side, spars against another opponent. Stridum talks to Yujiro about something which infuriates Yujiro a lot, and Stridum recalls how Baki told him that he wants to have a casual meal with Yujiro. He tried to tell Baki that the two cannot sit down and eat leisurely at the same place, so Baki questions why he cannot simply cook rice for his father. Yujiro hears all of this in the present and rushes out the building while thinking about how Baki wants to cook rice for him. The US president arrives in Japan to meet the new prime minister, and they discuss if they should let the father and son fight. Yujiro suddenly enters the room as the guard outside all lost their wills to fight the moment they saw him, and he asks the US president if he will interfere between his fight with his son. The US president panics and tries to explain that it's like a fight between two nations which involves the future of a lot of people, so Yujiro tells all of them to stay out of his fight. A famous pro boxer named Kaiser arrives in Japan and goes to meet Retsu but interrupts his training, so Retsu scolds him. He apologizes to Retsu and politely asks him to show his power that he has heard so much about from Retsu's previous opponent. Retsu wears an old glove and tears it just from his punch, which shocks all the boxers in the gym. Kaiser asks Retsu to accompany him to the US, where Retsu can face off against all the monster boxers to show if Kung Fu can beat them, and Retsu soon sets off with him. Baki imagines himself having dinner with Yujiro, which makes Koju suspect if someone else is staying with him, and he laughs at her for thinking so. He watches a cockroach and tries to imitate its fast acceleration, which helps him reach new heights while in the US. Retsu finally enters the boxing ring. Kaiser makes Retsu display his strength to the audience, so Retsu turns cinder blocks to dust and the opposing world champion agrees to the match. They begin promoting the match and a reporter asks Retsu about his fighting record, so Retsu reveals how he participated in many unofficial fights, during which he lost his leg. After some time, the day of the match arrives and Retsu starts off the match by going to the corner, which is the most dangerous area of a ring. The opponent feels delighted and confidently tries to attack, but Retsu quickly knocks him down in a few seconds with a no-inch punch. Back in Japan, out of nowhere, Baki senses that Yujiro is nearby, so he hurriedly makes 2 cups of coffee to drink with him. He turns around and serves the coffee to Yujiro, who drinks it whole. Yujiro asks him if this was the type of relationship Baki wanted, so he replies that he just wants them to fight like normal families do, ever a trivial argument instead of setting up a proper time and date. Yujiro complains about the coffee, so Baki quickly apologizes and states that Yujiro would never have drunk it whole if it was so bad. He asks Yujiro to make the coffee and Yujiro tells him that he needs to beat him first, after which he can make Yujiro submit into doing anything he wants. He leaves and Baki shouts at him to close the door gently next time, but inside he feels relieved instead. The doctor tries to convince Tokugawa to undergo treatment, otherwise it will be too late, but Tokugawa does not take him seriously, and meanwhile Chiharu Shiba tries to fight against Baki at the orders of Hanayama, but Baki tries not to fight him. He attacks Baki, so Baki just knocks him out without hurting him too much. In the US, Kaiser shows Retsu his next opponent named Smoke, and at night, Retsu is suddenly visited by Muhammad Ali, who warns him that Smoke will be a tricky opponent for Retsu. A few days later, the match finally begins and Retsu faces an equal opponent for the first time. Smoke's punches leave lingering damage on his body and Retsu falls to the ground first despite landing a perfect counter. He gets back up as he realizes that the gloves can also be used as weapons, but back in Japan, Chiharu Shiba appears in front of Baki again to fight him. He reveals that it's for Baki's practice, but Baki tells him that he is too weak for that after knocking him out again. He wakes up after a while and gets ready to fight Baki again, so Baki steps out. Chiharu Shiba does not let him prepare and punches him through the door before throwing him out. Back in the US, Retsu starts getting dizzy and he recalls how he felt the same once during his training in Belan Temple. He recalls how his master taught him to stop the attacks from affecting his brain, so he tries to apply it during the match, but the opponent continues to launch a barrage of attacks on him. Meanwhile, Baki knocks Shiba down again but goes to look for him this time to make him admit defeat, just like how Shiba does to people. He starts facing Shiba's attack by equally strong attacks, which breaks Shiba's body, so Shiba prepares to poke his eyes. Baki tells him to keep his fingers straight as he will use his eyes to break Shiba's fingers. He lunges towards his fingers with extreme speed and Shiba clenches a fist at the last moment, but Baki still manages to break them using just his eyes. Back in the US, Retsu gets knocked down once more, so he punches himself to stabilize his brain again, but the round soon ends. In the next round, he quickly knocks down his opponent, but he manages to get back up. Retsu continues to beat him till he falls down, but the opponent gets back up once more. They hit each other multiple times until Retsu falls down, but he manages to defeat his opponent after getting back up. Back in Japan, Shiba tells Hanayama about how Baki used his eyes to defeat him, and Hanayama becomes curious when he hears how fast Baki moved. Yujiro talks to Stridum about his meeting with Baki and tells him about how Baki is trying to make him cook something. Stridum feels shocked because he never thought the Great Ogre would not have a problem with cooking, and he almost says that Yujiro has gone soft, but Yujiro shuts him up before he can say anything. Baki on the other hand goes to Tokugawa and mentions that he and Yujiro might end up fighting anytime like normal father and son, so he wants Tokugawa to make sure no civilians get hurt during that time. Yujiro goes to Doppo and happily talks about how his son has grown up enough to bare his fangs at him. Baki goes to Goki, who tries to convince Baki to avoid the fight, but Baki convinces him that it's natural for a child to go against his father. Yujiro soon arrives to eat dinner with Baki again and even teaches him table manners, which shock Baki. At the end, Baki asks him to do the dishes, so Yujiro proposes a rock-paper-scissors competition but breaks Baki's rock with his scissors despite losing. He invites Baki to come to his place the next time, so the next day, Baki arrives outside the hotel wearing his casual shirt and jeans. He gets taken to the restaurant where Yujiro scolds him for not dressing properly, but Baki points out that he never learned these things because Yujiro neglected his duties as a father. They eat a luxurious dinner during which Yujiro teaches Baki how to use different utensils, and at the end Baki asks him why he killed his mother. Yujiro warns him not to cross the line, so Baki grabs his collar and questions what he needs to do to get the answer. Yujiro sends Baki flying to the chair and Baki mentions how he knew it would not work on him. Yujiro quickly shouts attention, so Baki instinctively stands up and Yujiro spanks him. Baki barely manages to avoid getting thrown out of the window and Yujiro tries to slap his hand for grabbing his collar but Baki dodges it. He realizes that Yujiro is just trying to discipline him instead of fighting and Yujiro slaps him through the wall. Baki tries to hit him but he grabs Baki and jumps down the building. They land on a car and Baki hits Yujiro's face again when Yujiro helps him up but he gets slapped back into the building. He pinches Baki's cheek so Baki tries to retaliate, not to damage but fight back like a proper son and Yujiro lands a hit on his head which shakes his brain so fast that he loses control. He gets sent flying to the escalator and Yujiro then performs a whip strike on him which leaves him screaming in pain. Baki tries to make him pay by doing the same but Yujiro manages to disperse the pain on his skin by clenching the whole skin at the same time. Tokugawa suddenly appears and cheers Baki to defeat Yujiro quickly as all the nearby people have been evacuated. Baki tries to attack but gets deflected to the wall instead and Yujiro asks him to stop holding back like a normal father would ask his son. Baki prepares himself to use his newly mastered move that he learned from watching a cockroach who does not have a single muscle. He relaxes his muscles to an extreme degree that makes him feel like they have turned liquid and he quickly tenses them to generate a large amount of power that allows him to execute a super speed tackle. He drags Yujiro a long distance and Yujiro remarks that whoever taught Baki such a move was a great teacher. He flips Baki outside the building but they both get shocked when they see the large amount of spectators cheering for them. Yujiro tries to back out but Baki suddenly strikes him 3 times at such a fast speed that the spectators fail to see it. Yujiro realizes that Baki is trying to tell him that the fight has already started and Baki attempts a super speed tackle once again but Yujiro does not budge. He slaps Baki on the face, again and again until he finally regains his composure. Baki's attacks fail to penetrate Yujiro's defenses and he suddenly senses that Pickle is watching from somewhere too. He performs the same Triceratops form he used against Pickle which leaves the spectators shocked and amazes Yujiro a lot. He thinks about how always used to wonder how strong the historic beasts were and prepares himself to find the answer to those questions. Baki rushes at him like a Triceratops and Yujiro faces its full force head on as Baki drags him several meters until they finally come to a stop. He tells Baki that it was impossible to move him with his small body so this shows that Baki was fully able to replicate the strength of a Triceratops. He tells Baki that no matter what form he uses, they are all just imitations in the end so he will now reveal the most ideal form of imitations. He begins waving his hands around as Baki wonders what animal he will imitate but Baki soon realizes that he is just imitating himself because he is the strongest creature. Yujiro flexes his back which lets out a white light and he punches from afar which even makes Baki feel it's from such a large distance. Baki steps forward and punches his chin which makes Yujiro almost fall to the ground. He manages to save himself and compliments Baki for reaching such heights. He tells Baki to come to him so he can pat his head and Baki starts crying because he had been craving for this love for the past 18 years but he refuses to let Yujiro pat his head during a fight. Yujiro tells him that he will show Baki what strength and he pats Baki's head after forcefully holding him in place. He says that he can do whatever he wants because he has the strength to do so and he sends Baki spinning. He lands multiple full-out strikes on Baki who lays flat on the ground while Yujiro wonders how he should end the fight but Pickle suddenly appears behind him. Baki punches him out of nowhere which breaks his tooth and he shouts at Pickle not to interfere. Despite being from the distant past, Pickle understands that he got scolded for trying to interfere so he quietly walks to the side where he sits down to watch the battle. Baki and Yujiro clash again and Yujiro comes down on top so he tries to finish the fight but Baki manages to dodge it. He enters the hand pocket style so Yujiro matches him to check who will come out on top this time. Yujiro reveals that he will attack in 5 seconds and he starts counting down. Baki draws his hands when the timer reaches 0 and he manages to come out on top as he pins Yujiro down on the asphalt. He feels overjoyed at his first win against his father but tells him not to let it end like this. Yujiro punches him right through the asphalt which even makes Baki pee but he still tries to attack Yujiro who starts making a happy face. He flexes his back once again and declares that he will now bring out the Hanma genes in Baki. He punches him with full force which sends Baki flying and deep inside a pyramid in Egypt, researchers find engravings of a man with a demon's back. Yujiro continues to strike Baki who almost gets knocked but an image of Hanma Yuichiro, Yujiro's father suddenly appears behind Baki and he tells Baki that he can win. Tokugawa reveals that Yuichiro was the person who defeated America before Yujiro and explains that America used every weapon possible to defeat him during the Okinawa War but failed. He further reveals that he stepped onto the Iowa ship which had a crew of 2,000 people but they all abandoned their ship when he performed his best technique called the dress. Yujiro says that Yuichiro has disappeared again like always and mentions that it had been a while since he had performed that technique. He suddenly grabs Baki by the leg and starts swinging him at extreme speed like nunchucks. Blood comes out from all the holes on his body and his vision becomes red as the blood rushes towards the head. Tokugawa witnesses it and realizes that this was the move which made the 2,000 people run. Yujiro uses his newly found nunchucks to destroy the car by hitting it over and over again, but at the end, Baki offers him a gift when he puts Baki down. He reveals a small robot in his hand that he made while Yujiro was trying to bash the car, and Yujiro realizes that the reason he did not properly feel any impact was because Baki was dodging everything. Baki starts hitting Yujiro, who recalls how he felt very lonely after reaching the pinnacle but thinks about how he can finally feel joy again. They exchange multiple strikes and Baki punches him so hard that it makes Yujiro wonder if he had taken any punch stronger than his before. Koju suddenly tries to make them stop, but they tell her not to interfere and continue fighting. At one point, Baki sits on his shoulders as Yujiro carries him around, but he soon comes down as they prepare to end this long fight. Yujiro squashes Baki's head, which causes blood to come out of his ears the same way he attacked his mother, and he squashes it once again. Back in Egypt, the researchers find murals of a fight between a father and son while a huge crowd watches them, just like the scene happening in Japan. The father and son continue to beat each other up and they stop defending as they enter a brutal slugfest. All the martial artists watching get shocked that Baki is fighting on equal terms against Yujiro, and Yujiro stops defending himself at one point as Baki continues to land punches without even knowing what's happening. Yujiro finally hugs him and breaks multiple ribs before letting him go. Baki falls to the ground and Yujiro looks at the amount of damage his body has suffered, so he starts walking away. He senses Baki's spirit still hitting him, so he starts cooking for Baki and tells him to get up so they can eat together. They start eating, but Baki finds the soup made by Yujiro, so he flips the table, which shocks Yujiro. He tells Baki that he was able to make the strongest creature cook for him, and he declares that Baki is now the strongest because he made him fulfill his wish. Baki reminds him of how he once said that the one with his head held higher in the end is the winner, so Yujiro, who was walking away while he was lying on the ground, is the actual winner. They both declare each other the winner and the crowd goes wild as Tokugawa declares the end of the greatest father-son fight, but with no decisive winner and the unbeaten Yuichiro Hanma still out of sight. Is there more left to this story, and will Baki ever manage to fully surpass Yujiro? Comment your thoughts below and make sure to like and subscribe the channel for more content.